It's like I've got 6 o'clock, so I want to welcome everybody here tonight to our first actual in-person meeting in the last couple of months. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Sarah Ladart, who will lead us in our invocation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Would you please pray with me? Dear Lord, may we begin by asking for you to grant peace to the loved ones of the nearly 370,000 people from around the world, 106,000 of them being Americans, and over 1,800 Georgians that have lost their lives to COVID-19. May we remember that while this is a mild inconvenience to most of us, we have many vulnerable neighbors. May we not take for granted the luxury of a home to work from and the flexibility to homeschool our children. Let us not forget those who do not have these options. As we take steps towards reopening, let us be thankful for this opportunity to gather. Help us to simplify our activities and traditions so we can focus on caring for and protecting each other. We are gathered tonight to serve our community and to use our resources wisely, to represent all members of our community and to make decisions that promote the common good. We pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. We ask that you would graciously grant them confidence in their knowledge of what is good and fitting. We pray for the agenda set before them this evening. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who choose to make Milton their home. Finally, Lord, we ask you to grant us peace in our homes and peace in our hearts. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, June 1st, 2020 to order. The city strongly recommends that you review tonight's agenda carefully and that if you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, please bring your comment cards to the clerk as soon as possible. While the Milton City rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the clerk calls the agenda item, once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. And I will ask Stacy, is there any direction on, I know we're also connected with Zoom, correct? Yes. Okay, so as far as any other directions for people on Zoom, or we assume they know what they're doing if they're on Zoom? You know me, I'm all about the technology, know everything about it. So, okay. Then if our city clerk will please call roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be happy to call roll for the June 1st, 2020 regular meeting. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Peyton Jamison.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Laura Bentley.
Here.
Councilmember Carol Cookerly.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Rick Morrig is absent. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, I want to thank those that are both in attendance and virtual attendance. Also, thank you to staff and everybody involved. Obviously, this is a little bit different setup here and trying to be as safe as possible. So thank you for the extra work for that. I will ask the city clerk to please sound the next item.
Approval of the meeting agenda, item number 2151.
Okay. I also want to add an executive session to discuss land acquisition and potential litigation along with personnel. And I also have a couple other staff requested changes on agenda item number 20-050, consideration of RZ 20-07, section 64-1112, allowed use chart should read section 64-1121. And agenda item number 20-054, consideration of an ordinance to amend Appendix A, Section 4-52, related to Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages of the Code of the City of Milton, Georgia. I'd like to remove the Section 4-52 part. Do I have any other changes on the agenda? If not, I'll open up for a motion as read.
Mayor, Okay, that makes it simple. I move that we accept the agenda as you just mentioned.
Okay.
It changed.
Okay. I believe, Carol, is that a second? Okay. Had a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, the next item is public comment. Do we have any public comment items tonight, Tammy?
We do, but not for just general comment.
Okay.
We'll have them later into the,
Okay.
yes.
Then we will move on to the consent agenda. If you could please read the items.
And Mayor, I just want to double check and make sure we had one more. I just want to confirm it wasn't a general. And it wasn't. Our first consent agenda item is approval of the April 27th, 2020 regular City Council meeting minutes, agenda item number 20152. Second, approval of the financial statement and investment report for the period ending April 2020, agenda item number 20153. Next is an approval of a change order between the City of Milton and AT&T for network integration services, agenda item number 20154. Approval of an agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia, and Invoice Cloud for electronic payment processing services, agenda item number 20155. Our fifth and final consent item is approval of a subdivision plat and revision. The name of the development is Excel Capital Construction, land lot 1171 and 1172 at 12450 Charlotte Drive. It's a minor plat for creation of 2 lots. The total acres is 4.25 with a density of 0.47 per acre. Agenda item number 20156.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. Do I have a motion to second on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we don't have any items tonight under reports and presentations, so I'll move to our first presentation. Tammy, if you'll please sound the first presentation items.
Consideration to adopt the revised Milton Tree Canopy Conservation Ordinance and Tree Conservation Manual. Agenda item number 20157. Consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2020 budget for the general fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amounts shown as expenditures, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 20158.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion on the first presentation items?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the first presentation items as read.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing. Tammy, if you would please sound that first public hearing, the public hearing item.
Sure. A consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2020 budget for the general fund of the City of Milton, Georgia, amending the amounts shown as expenditures, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 20158, Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are here this evening to discuss requested amendments to the fiscal year 2020 budget. I would like to explain that the figures you see in the current budget column include new initiatives that were approved in the budget process last fall, as well as any internal amendments that have been approved to date. Just as a reminder, internal amendments include any transfers of appropriations from one line item to another within the same department in the same fund. All other requests to transfer funds between departments or funds are contained within this document tonight. As you all know, the economic impact of COVID-19 is being seen in revenue collections statewide. Milton is no exception, as the city's second largest revenue grouping is sales and use taxes. We will discuss the anticipated impact shortly. But first, I would like to review the city's fund balance policy to lay the foundation for the presentation. According to Milton's Code of Ordinances, the general fund is required to maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance of 25% of the subsequent year's budgeted revenues. At the end of fiscal year 2019, the unassigned fund balance was approximately 26.2% of FY 2020's budgeted revenues. Even with the amendments that are about to be presented, the fund balance is projected to continue to meet that minimum requirement. Milton is legally allowed to utilize fund balance in excess of required minimum as a budget funding source, and such use shall be deemed a one-time revenue for budgeting purposes. The first slide you see is the general fund budget summary. You will notice the amendment request will result in an overall decrease to revenues in the amount of $1,363,459 and an overall decrease in expenditures of $507,264. The decrease in expenditures is being primarily driven by salary savings resulting from position vacancies in various departments, as well as projects that staff have identified which can be deferred until we have a more complete understanding of the overall impact that COVID-19 and the current economic conditions will have on our city. The net reduction to fund balance is $856,195. The following is a list of revenue amendments requests by line item. I will highlight some of the more significant amendments and we'll be happy to address any other line items you may want to discuss. You can see in the taxes category that title ad valorem tax is coming in higher than anticipated. Even considering a potential decrease in vehicle sales, the city still anticipates an overall increase of $175,000 over the current budget projections. Directly below, you can see the anticipated decreases to local option sales tax. This decrease of $1,353,347 was calculated by looking at revenues received from May through September of 2019 and applying an anticipated reduction of 40% to May and 30% for the remainder of the year. Lost is collected 1 month in arrears, so May's revenues represent activity for the month of April and so on. This same methodology was applied to the T-SPLOST revenue budget you'll see later this evening. The anticipated decreases to alcohol beverage excise taxes of $124,000 and business and occupation taxes of $100,000 were based on activity to date and the anticipated impact of the current economic circumstances, as well as the extension of the due dates for both revenues as approved through the city's emergency ordinance. Moving down the page, you will see the city's activity fees. The Parks and Recreation Department has calculated that the temporary suspension of activities will result in an overall decrease of approximately $30,000 to the related budget items. Another effect which has resulted from current events is the anticipated loss in revenue related to court fines and forfeitures and related administrative fees. You can see here that administrative fees are expected to decrease by approximately $27,600, and on the next page you will see fines and forfeitures with an anticipated decrease of $130,000. The last area I would like to mention related to revenues is investment income. With rates dropping, we are experiencing a decline in interest earned on the city's investments. In the general fund, there is an anticipated drop of $90,000, and you will see similar decreases across other investment income in the Green Space Bond Fund and the T-SPLOST Fund as well. I'll stop here to see if there are any questions related to the general fund revenue amendments before you.
Yeah, that would help.
Dave, you can go to the first page of the expenditures. Shift page. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Okay, so does anyone have any revenue-related questions?
Do you have any questions on that for Bernadette?
Okay.
Okay.
So on page 5 of the presentation should be the beginning of the expenditures by department. There are several pages of amendments which have been listed by department. I will go through and summarize them for you, and please feel free to stop me if you have any questions about a particular request. In the Mayor and Council Department, there have been a decrease of $42,010, $25,000 of which are related to a change in the planned council staff retreats for FY 2020. The remaining $17,010 accounts for the cancellation of the annual GMA conference as a result of COVID-19. Next, moving on to the City Clerk Department, you will see reductions related to the salary savings we spoke about earlier, as well as some savings related to the November 2019 election. In the General Administration Department, we are seeing a decrease of $1,000 related to the cancellation of the city's base camp subscription, as staff has moved to utilizing other project management tools. Finance has an overall decrease related to position vacancies in the amount of $10,000. And legal fees have been coming in higher than originally anticipated, and you'll see a request of $40,000 for that department. Moving on to the next page, you will see Information Services has salary savings due to vacancy and a request to transfer $28,980 to the Police Department to account for public safety-related communications and bandwidth expenses that are now being accounted for in that department. The Risk Management Department accounts for the city's general liability insurance costs, and the related expenses have come in slightly lower than originally anticipated, resulting in a decrease of $5,696 to that budget. In the General Government Buildings Department, you'll see a request for a slight increase to the budgets related to cleaning services at City Hall and the Birdhouse. The janitorial services bid came in higher than anticipated, but you will see that these expenses have been offset by savings to the facilities technician expenses when we get to the Public Works Department. Communications has a reduction of $8,000 related to position vacancies. Community outreach and engagement is seeing an increase of $3,500 to the account for sponsorships related to the annual State of the City event that was held in January. There was a corresponding increase to the revenue line item for private entity contributions that offsets this request. And the municipal court is requesting $12,246 from contingency to account for the city's share of common area maintenance expenses related to the Deerfield lease. Moving on to the next page. The police department has an overall decrease to its budget of $164,856. Of this, $100,000 is related to salary savings. $82,536 was approved in the M&O initiative to obtain vehicles for 2 sworn officers. This amendment is simply transferring that money to the capital projects fund where those expenses are accounted for. You'll see the transfer of $28,980 from the Information Services Department for those communications expenses we just spoke about. There's a reduction of $1,120 transferring to the Fire Department for their portion of the net motion expenses. Lastly, you will see a decrease to machinery and equipment in the amount of $10,180. This reduction is a result of an increase of $22,670 from contingency to replace officer laptops, $6,688 in donations from Target and the Milton First Responders Foundation that is offset by a corresponding revenue increase. And then lastly, a decrease of $39,540 related to the deferral of the purchase and installation of stationary license plate readers in the city. This was one of those projects we discussed that staff has identified that could be deferred until there's a better understanding of COVID-19's impact to the city's finances. Going on to the next page. The fire department has recognized salary savings as well as the transfer in of money for net motion from the police department. Additionally, there's a request to transfer $8,307 to Public Works and Passive Parks to account for their portion of the purchase of the property off of Old Bullpen Road from Fulton County. As you know, that property is split between the Public Works Yard, Birmingham Park, as well as Station 43. Public Works has an overall decrease of $230,837. This is made up of a transfer of $11,802 to Passive Parks Department to account for its share of the survey work completed related to the purchase of the property, as well as $1,242 related to the actual property acquisition offset by those savings related to the facilities technician and janitorial contract services mentioned earlier of $20,837. Additionally, there was $43,277 that was saved from the current NPDES permit compliance project and a transfer of $150,000 to the Community Development Department for expenses related to the construction and land inspection services that are now accounted for in that department as opposed to Public Works. Next page, Parks and Recreation Active has a slight increase to cleaning services of $599 related to that janitorial services bid we've been discussing. An increase of $1,000 to account for the donation for the Milton Boys Feeder Lacrosse for needed improvements at Cox Road facility. The last 2 requests for this department are from the contingency account to cover higher than anticipated costs associated with the IGA between the City of Milton and the City of Alpharetta, and the portable bathrooms that were needed at the former Milton Country Club property. Passive Parks is seeing an increase of $49,467. $11,802 of which we discussed earlier related to expenses for the surveying at the property, $7,065 for the actual acquisition, and $30,600 has been approved for the trail maintenance work throughout Birmingham Park that I believe has been completed. Here you'll see salary savings from community development on the next page in the amount of $50,000. An overall increase of $70,000 to professional fees, which is primarily being driven by the $150,000 transfer in from Public Works to account for land development and construction inspection services that we spoke about. Community development was also able to identify 2 projects that could be deferred. Review of the form-based codes in the Crabapple and Deerfield districts amounting to $50,000, and the review of the current solid waste plan amounting to $30,000. Again, we will revisit those once we understand the full impact of the circumstances. In the debt services department, you will see the release of funds related to the debt service for the city's revenue bonds. The bond series 2019 issuance was approved in October. The debt service for these bonds will be accounted for in the revenue bond fund. You will see a corresponding transfer out to that fund on the next page. And please note there was an overall savings of $18,692 realized between the original estimates made for that issuance and then the actual approved final closing rates for that bond issuance. Lastly, you will see the reduction from contingency related to the items we've been discussing. And on the next page, you will see those transfers out for capital projects for the vehicles for the 2 new departments, and again, the overall net decrease to the fund balance of $856,195, leaving the city in a position to meet its required reserve threshold. I'll pause here, see if anyone has any questions as we close out the general fund and move on to special revenue funds.
Any questions for Bernadette?
Okay. Moving on to page 12. You will see the budget summaries for the Special Events Fund, the Hotel Motel Tax Fund, and the E911 Fund. On page 13 is the details for the Special Events Fund. There has been a request to update revenue anticipations across 4 categories. First, the city received more vendor fees and fewer sponsor fees than anticipated for the Crabapple Fest, which occurred last October. There's also a request to recognize anticipated revenues for the Gas South Partnership. And lastly, as a result of the current circumstances, hotel rentals have declined, and the city is anticipating a drop in revenues of $35,000 from the transfer in from the Hotel Motel Tax Fund. On page 14, you will see those corresponding changes to the Hotel Motel Tax Fund of their revenues and transfers out to special events. On page 15, we have the E911 Fund. Revenue collections for this category have increased, and we are requesting an increase to that line item budget as well as the outgoing expenditure budget to cover our share with the City of Alpharetta for our E911 IGA. That wraps up the special revenue funds, and on page 16 you can see the capital project funds budget summaries. You will see a net decrease to fund balance within these funds as follows: $49,340 in the capital projects fund, $23,895 in the green space bond fund, $807,453 in the T-SPLOS fund. Moving on to the next page, you will see $93 decrease in the capital grant fund, $97,653 to the impact fees fund, and lastly, an increase of $172,908 to the fund balance in the revenue bond fund. On page 18, we'll begin to go over the requests that contribute to those amounts. In the capital projects fund, there are a few changes in revenue recognition, including 3 operating transfers in from other funds, including the $82,536 we discussed from the general fund to cover the vehicles for the 2 new officers, a transfer of $169,938 from the capital grant fund to release remaining funds from a completed infrastructure improvement project at Crabapple and Birmingham, and $234,135 from the impact fees fund to cover impact fee eligible expenses for the Freemanville at Providence intersection improvement project. Next, you will see the corresponding increase to the expenditure line for the police vehicles. And on the next page, you will see increases to the pavement management budget in the amount of $563,032. This amount will allow the Public Works Department to complete paving throughout FY 2020 to maintain a pavement condition index score of 70 according to the current paving plan. There is a request to cover upgrades to the fuel management system in the amount of $4,340. You will also see a $17,000 increase to the Bell Memorial Park account to recognize donations made by the local lacrosse teams towards the practice wall at the park. And you will see recognition for tree recompense revenues as well as reduction to contingency as it relates to the above requests. Again, the overall decrease to that fund balance is $49,340. Now moving on to the Green Space Bond Fund on page 20. We'll have revenue updates for property taxes as well as a reduction to the expectation for revenue related to the interest earnings as we discussed. And lastly, a recognition of broker rebate received for the land acquisition of Freemanville Road. On the next page, you will see the adjustment to the expense lines for land conservation as it relates to those changes in revenue recognitions. On page 22, we'll see the T-SPLOST Fund. Expectations related to sales tax and investment income have been adjusted. And on page 23, we have the Capital Grant Fund. We have revenue recognition updates related to Element Grant as well as the Smart Communities Challenge Grant. You'll also see corresponding expenditure updates for those line items, as well as a transfer out of those remaining funds from the Crabapple at Birmingham project that we just discussed in the Capital Projects Fund. On page 24, you'll see those last two items, and you'll see the overall net decrease of $93 to the fund balance in the Capital Grant Fund. On page 25, we have the Impact Fees Fund. I promise we're almost there. This is a request to reduce revenues related to projects based on our best projections for impact fees from the current economic conditions. We will keep an eye on this activity and bring forward any additional changes in subsequent amendments if needed. And finally, on page 26, we have the Revenue Bond Fund. Here you will see revenue anticipation requests related to investment income, bond proceeds received, and a transfer in from the general fund to recognize related debt for the bonds that we received. As opposed to keeping them in the general fund, we're going to maintain them in the Revenue Bond Fund. The expenditure updates before you recognize activity as it resulted from the final authorized bond issuance, updating our original anticipated estimates. That is our budget amendment number 1 for FY 2020. I'm happy to answer any questions related to those amendment requests.
Okay, Laura?
Bernadette, can you go back one slide? That was pretty quick. So,
Impact fees? Page 26, Dave?
yes, please. I'm just, okay, so just general budgeting question. So these are the changes, and so everything else is still as budgeted?
Correct.
Okay. So and that's what I was trying to find, the Milton Country Club, for example, phase, and this might not be a question, it might be more for Steve. The Milton Country Club, phase 1A and 1B is still in the 2020 budget?
It's still in there. I don't recall exactly what the number
amounts
was, but it's still in there exactly as you approved.
And then also the citywide speed survey is as well earmarked and still somewhat safe?
It is. We haven't begun that yet. We have revenues that actually probably just came in. We have a meeting either this week to go over the revenues that just came in, just to make sure that there's no surprises. As long as there are no surprises, we're going to probably start moving on that.
Okay, so we're just waiting, and I understand that, and I think that's a good plan, but we'll know pretty soon what the most updated information is in case we have to start prioritizing projects that we might be at risk.
Correct.
And we have already. We've separated the discretionaries from the non-discretionaries, and that would still fall into a discretionary. That's why I just want to see whether some of the projects we put off, like the plate readers and the Crabapple, some of the reviews of the Crabapple form-based code, and in Deerfield, they just weren't critical. So those were low-hanging fruit to defer till we can see what other revenues. We know how important that speed study is to the city, but it still falls under that discretionary category. And before we pull the plug on that, I bring that back before you.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is the association between Crabapple Fest and the Hotel Motel. Is it my understanding that the Hotel Motel funds are special events?
Currently, 100% of the money we receive from Hotel Motel Tax Fund goes into the Special Events Fund. That fund does carry a fund balance, so at this time, we are assessing what we will be able to do should revenues remain declined, but also looking at what we can do if they continue to go back to where they were.
Yeah, so that's my concern as well, is just monitoring that with regard to being able to I think, don't we try to break even on some of these special events so that we,
They are primarily funded by the hotel and motel
Right.
tax money. We currently do not have a transfer in from the general fund. Prior years, we've done different things. We always try to get as many sponsorships as possible, and we also utilize 100% of that hotel motel tax money.
so we'll know more shortly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly.
That was very helpful.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have public comment. Stacy, virtual public comment?
Yes, sir. We have Miss Judy Birds. Miss Judy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Judy Birds, 1165 Brain Drive, Milton, Georgia. I just had one question for clarification. There were several shifts on debt service funds, although there still appears to be a significant increase in the overall amount of debt versus the previous budget. Two questions there. How much is the net increase in the debt in total after all the shifting of funds from A to B? And also, previously, our debt amount was benchmarked to be in a very good place compared to other municipalities of our size. So I'm also interested in understanding what the new debt level will put us on a benchmark with other municipalities.
Okay, thank you. And I might ask if the appropriate staff person could reach out to Ms. Birds at appropriate or as soon as realistically possible. Okay. Do we have any more public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. We don't have any items under the zoning agenda, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Tammy, if you'll please read sound the first item.
Consideration of amendments to Chapter 32 of the Milton City Code to prohibit the use of vaping products on city-owned property. Agenda item number 2145. Mr. Tom McElveen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What you have before you are two ordinance changes. They work off of each other, so I'll address them at the same time, if that's all right. Chapter 34 refers to Parks and Recreation and Cultural Affairs. We're changing the language that already exists and expanding it to not allow smoked tobacco, smokeless tobacco, and vaping. Currently, it only refers to smoking. Chapter 32 refers to offenses and miscellaneous provisions. We're adding the same language as written in Chapter 34 so that it makes it illegal to use smoked tobacco, smokeless tobacco, and vaping on city-owned property, not just parks. Lastly, we are eliminating Article 3 in Chapter 34, which is special events. We're taking it out because it's already mentioned in Chapter 64 under zoning.
Okay.
Any questions?
Are there any questions for Tom on this? Laura?
Sorry, I didn't.
No, Laura, raise your hand first.
Just a quick question about funding and I noticed that there is no impact to the city. Just a suggestion not to go out and flash cut, make new signs. I don't think that's necessary, but maybe use our social media presence to make the community aware of this change. And then as signs are run over and stolen, we can add that verbiage to the public parks. So just a suggestion.
Okay, Paul?
Just a question, Tom, the language that we're adopting that has to do with the vaping, is it the language that was adopted most recently that includes all vaping, not just the nicotine-related products? So it's all vaping is excluded, correct?
I believe so.
It is correct.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-145.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Jameson with a second from Councilmember Longoria. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Now, Tammy, if you'll please read the next item.
The consideration of amendments to Chapter 34 of Milton Code, of City Code, to prohibit the use, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure you already.
No, I'm sorry. I'm having sign language with Tom. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing.
Okay.
Time will be up again.
Consideration of amendments to the Chapter 34 of the Milton City Code to prohibit the use of vaping products in city parks and to eliminate Article 3, special events. Mr. Tom McElveen, but I believe.
That's lumped into what was just read. One section was related to parks, one was related to facilities. It covers. We did it separately for legal reasons, but it's the same thing.
Right, but as far as, is there any other questions on that? Or obviously everybody knows it's just for public buildings, this one, but same general scope of it. All right, then I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-146.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Bentley and a second from Councilmember Cookerly for approval. All in charge, or all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that passes unanimous. Okay.
The third item is consideration of an ordinance authorizing the conditional operation of personal transportation vehicles on designated city streets. Chief Rich Austin, agenda item number 2147.
Greetings, Mayor, members of council. This item's a bit of housekeeping, so to speak. If you recall, we discussed the use of PTVs or golf carts within the city at the March 9th work session, as well as the parameters of PTV usage already provided in state law. This ordinance would simply state that PTV usage is allowed in the city on public streets with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less when done so within the parameters of existing state law.
Okay, are there any questions on that for Chief? Laura?
Just a verification, because, I just want to make sure this is housekeeping, nothing's changing. We're bringing the state law that is allowed here to a city ordinance.
Right, just developing that into a city ordinance.
Okay,
Yes.
and so golf carts have specific equipment that makes them roadworthy, correct? So an ATV is not roadworthy and not included in this
That is correct.
ordinance.
This would not encompass ATVs.
Okay, and drivers of these PTVs have to have a driver's license, 16 years of age.
That is correct.
And we're still not crossing state routes.
Right, that's prohibited by state law unless there's a designated crossing.
And by bringing this ordinance to the city level, we are not incurring any liability.
That is correct. That's also very clearly spelled out in the state law.
Okay. And we don't overrule gated neighborhoods.
That's correct. This would only affect public streets.
Yeah.
Okay.
HOAs and
Thank you.
private neighborhoods.
Yeah, HOAs could still make their own decisions on that.
That's important to note. So it's not just gated HOAs. All HOAs can make their own regulations, and while the city may permit the use, an HOA can prohibit the use.
Okay. Paul?
Chief, just a couple of clarifications on the actual golf carts. Mm-hmm. So if a golf cart is capable of more than 25 miles per hour, it would not, or 20 miles per hour, it would not be a permitted golf cart in the city of Milton.
Correct. There are very specific limitations that are outlined in state law.
Okay. And is there a verification that we go through to determine whether that vehicle, that cart in particular, is capable of more or less?
Typically, golf carts that are purchased would fall within these guidelines if an officer had an occasion to believe that one of these golf carts were, quote, souped up or could go further. There is some checking that they could do with some of our state partners to help make that determination.
Okay, so which goes to my last one, there's like no seat belts required. Yes,
seat belts are required.
Oh, it is required. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, they call them hip restraints.
I did see the handles and hip restraints is what that was referring to. Okay.
Yes.
I misunderstood.
A little different terminology there.
Great, thank you. So again, is it an application to the city or is it an application to the state?
There is no application required through the state law. So
Okay.
we're mirroring exactly the state law, so we did not add that as a stipulation.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? And I'll open up for motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-147.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, Tammy, if you'll please sound the next unfinished business item.
Consideration of RZ 20-01 definitions regarding Chapter 64 zoning of the Code of the City of Milton, Georgia. Agenda item number 20044, Ms. Sarah Ladart.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The next 11 items on the agenda are all related to the rewrite of Chapter 4, which is our alcohol ordinance. I would like to start by thanking both Michelle Stumpy with Taylor English and Deborah Dance with Gerard and Davis, who are both here, for helping with this project. We began this project last September and have the final drafts of Chapter 4, the Chapter 64 edits, and the adjustments to Appendix A to present to you tonight for approval this evening. In an effort to streamline the first 9 zoning items, Ken has approved that I go over all of them together, and then Tammy will call for your vote on each individual item after that. So I'm going to kind of start with the overall objectives of the rewrite of Chapter 4 and then the amendments to Chapter 64 and Appendix A. There were really 3 main objectives throughout everything. It's to make the ordinance easier for both the city and for businesses to read through it and understand it, to create new opportunities for businesses to come to Milton, and then, of course, to create new revenue sources. Kind of an overview of the brainstorming and the articles in the Milton Herald and the engagement that we've done since August, just to show that this is something that we've talked about, we've brought in front of council several times for your input, so we're very happy with the final document that the ladies behind me put together. So the first zoning edit is to the definitions. So I think that's 2 or 3 slides. David, 1, 2, 3. One more. We replaced a couple definitions, then we added a handful more just to create cohesiveness and clarity when people are looking at 64 to know what it is that they're doing. So that's RZ 20-1. The next one, RZ 20-2, is just saying that we clarify this many, many times throughout this and the alcohol ordinance, that bars and nightclubs are strictly prohibited in the city of Milton. Nothing that we are proposing tonight is to encourage bar or bar-like activity. So that's 2, RZ 20-3. All of the ones going forward are allowing the new permits and licenses into the different business zones and tracts throughout the city of Milton. So the first one is for the mixed-use district, and then for the C1 community business district, then C2 community business district, this community unit plan district, the rural Milton overlay, so that allowing it in places except for single-family use, and then through the Crabapple form-based code, allowing it for right in the T4, T4 open, and T5 transit zones, and then in the Deerfield form-based code, allowing it by right everywhere except T2. So those are all of the edits to Chapter 64 that were presented to and approved by the Planning Commission on January 29th. So are there any questions regarding any of those?
Paul?
Yes, sir.
Sarah, can you go back to your list of there were the 2 that are still prohibited. It was bars and nightclubs. And
Yes.
Completely. So we will have in our ordinance the ability to have each one of these things. So as I get questions from the community or that all of these were contemplated in our ordinance. You can have a farm winery, a food hall cafe, et cetera. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So mind you, just because it says here that it's allowed in a certain district, you still have a handful of other criteria that you have to meet.
Right.
So it doesn't just say you can pop up a brewery anywhere. You still have to meet other criteria.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Laura?
So I have a question too, but do we, okay, public comment, or can I ask questions about the details?
No, you can ask questions now.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just want to make sure, because I have a lot of questions. So would you like me to wait? Because the chart that is RZ 20-07, so those are the uses that are allowed. I just want to make sure I understand this, that they're allowed in the rural Milton overlay district. Yes. Okay. The single asterisk is by right, and the double asterisk is what we anticipate alcohol licenses or permits be used for currently. Okay. So my question is, in a by right situation, I mean, you have a kennel. They don't have a use permit. They're by right. So what is their, are they allowed some sort of alcohol, permit, or, I mean, that's my concern.
So the kennel? So
Yes.
if they meet other criteria, so I mean, they can't have consumption on premises like a restaurant does, because they don't have a full kitchen.
Okay.
So those sorts of things.
So-
There are other catch-alls too. Now, the kennel could, in theory, get an incidental license where they can give 2 beers or 2 glasses of wine to any patron for free on any given day.
Okay, that's my question, is the by rights that are already embedded in the community have to meet another threshold to be able to have this ability.
Yes.
As well as these other uses have to go through the public notification process of seeking a special use permit as well.
So if they wanted to get an incidental license?
No.
Okay.
Just it's something that's not currently there. If they wanted to have alcohol on, for example, an AG1 parcel, you can petition for a special use permit because it would be more frequent than just a special event permit, which is just twice a year. So that's how you, within the AG1 district, have public notification of those uses and alcohol being available in that area. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood this chart, because I know that the Planning Commission spent about an hour on it, and I still was confused. So I thank them for their full vetting of this.
Yes, they did.
Okay, Paul?
While we're on that chart, I know this is not necessarily an alcohol-related suggestion, but at some point, we probably need to review this chart in our uses and applications within the city. And the fact that do we have any aircraft landing areas currently or contemplated? Do we have any racetracks currently or contemplated? And racetrack, may need a new definition at some point. Is it go-kart track, or is it true race cars?
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that we at some point take a look at the chart.
Sure.
Make sure that the uses that we're addressing.
So you're outside of Chapter 4, what we're discussing right now. So you're saying revisit what is currently in our zoning ordinances regarding special use permits, and see whether or not we still want to consider those to be applicable.
Because, for example, racetrack is on here. It's got a double asterisk, which means it would have to go through a qualifying process to be considered for that. But if we're never going to have a racetrack considered, why would we even need to have it on the chart?
I would argue that a lot of our citizens probably would agree we've already got racetracks on some of our roads.
Some of our roads, yep. That's true, Joe. Maybe we should define oval versus straight line.
So we can, if that's what the council would like to see, I can direct our community development department to look at our current use permits there's a finite list of them. It wouldn't be that difficult to do, and go over and see if that's something that still makes sense in the city of Milton. Is it that easy?
Well, it is, but I would offer this cautionary instruction, and that is that sometimes it is better to have topics, even if they are not something that's viable right now, lest an activity begin to occur that is not covered in your code, and then we decide to go ahead and regulate it, and voila, they say, well, we're grandfathered because we did that before you had a topic or a topic in your code that prohibited it. There has been some recent case law examples of that where that has in fact occurred, where a code had a catch-all in the zoning district that says if something is not specifically set forth, it's prohibited. And the Supreme Court said, nice try, but that's not enough. And therefore they allowed a use to come in that was something the public policymakers at the time no longer wanted, and they couldn't stop those old uses because they were considered to be grandfathered. So again, I don't know that I envision a racetrack forming in Milton anytime soon, but I would give you just some cautionary instruction that before we start kicking off things that we don't think are truly viable, it might be nice to have them covered so no one can say, you never regulated me and I started this practice and therefore I'm grandfathered. Now you can't. Just something to think about.
When you say covered, Ken, just so I make sure I can understand, what do you mean by covered?
I mean addressed. There is a specific provision in your code that specifically addresses that enterprise or use, and we have it in there, and that means if you wanted to start, just since we're talking about a racetrack, if you wanted to start a racetrack in Milton, you couldn't legally without a special use permit, and if you do, you're illegal. You can't be grandfathered if you started and you were illegal. You just can't. So that's what I'm talking about.
So would you say explicitly prohibit racetracks? Is that what you mean by covering it, or?
They are prohibited without a special use permit.
You and I could discuss this offline.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good, sage advice once again. Ken, thank you. So given the opportunity to review the chart in this particular application, it brought to mind some of those other questions. So thank you, Sarah.
Okay. Other questions on?
Page 44, I'm sorry, just going back to the nonprofit civic organizations, is there a limit to the number of times an event can be held or applied for by a nonprofit at a certain, like, say that there's a farm in Milton. Do we have a limit to how many times the nonprofit can use that specific? Is that limited by our special event?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's limited by a special event, yes. Right now, I believe it is limited to 2 permits per year, and it can span 10 days, maybe? So you could do like 2 weekends.
I'm amazed you know that much about it, and that is true. But we're, I think it's 14, but we're reviewing that right now, our special event permits, to see. It needed some work, as we discussed in this in chambers here. We have our first drafts that we're working on right now, so we're going to continue to move forward with that. Ultimately, the council can decide whether 2 is the right number, and I don't think that the nonprofit issue you have in here is what governs 2. I think it's the special event permit.
Okay.
Am I correct in saying that?
Are you looking at me? I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so another question would be with regard to farm wineries, page 62.
Thank you for the page reference.
So the state governs farm wineries, is that right? So they can sell Georgia wine and the homegrown grapes. Does the winery have, can they provide food service, or does that require a special use permit?
I'm not sure about the food with a use permit. So under the state of Georgia, a farm winery has more freedoms than what we're proposing in ours. So we're being more restrictive as far as the alcohol that can be sold at a farm winery in Milton. I'm not sure about food. I would assume that
Okay.
that would have to go through the
Well, let me
Department
ask
of
this.
Agriculture.
So if a farm winery wanted to have weddings or special events, would that require a special use permit?
Yes. So Ken, you actually provided a very nice response to Bernadette's question about this. So if I'm retelling the story correctly, so a farm winery, their main purpose has to be the production and sale of wine. So to be that and to also have a special event permit where you're saying, my main thing here is special events, those two things are in conflict. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
They can't both be your main.
It's a fairly lengthy opinion, does it lend itself, but if you want it, Councilmember Bentley, and any of the council want it, I'll be happy to provide it to you, of course.
And just to clarify, when we're more restrictive than the state on farm wineries, can you clarify that a little bit? Just
So-
for everybody?
Michelle, make sure I'm saying this correctly. The state allows for the sale of wines from out of state and also beer and liquor. Yes. And so when we brought this to council for the work session, we proposed that to council and we decided that it would be more or less putting a bar in the middle of AG1 if we allowed for the sale of beer and liquor. So council decided to keep it to Georgia wineries.
May I split a hair on that?
Of course.
part? My understanding, this could be wrong, but that farm wineries often have to import concentrate. Okay, but we allow that. So that
Right.
The
So-
farm winery can be productive.
Right. I learned a lot of the wineries in Dahlonega get their grapes from California.
Right.
But then they produce it
Right.
here. And so that's what classifies it as theirs
Well, they
and
put
produced
a
here.
percentage of their own in that then, yeah, thank
Yep.
you. Okay.
Yeah, they purchase, you know.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Paul?
Sarah, I don't remember which, there were 9 sections, I don't remember which one I was reading, and that had to do with the way the signage works. Have we gotten to that yet in your first part of this?
Signage, is that in?
All I really wanted to say was there were some definitions about permitted signage and the way table cards would work and those kinds of things. Does our regular signed ordinance supersede any signage that we would suggest would take place regulating this for advertising and awareness?
So there is a section in the alcohol ordinance about signage and promotion and how you can't have like
Right.
visible signage and you have to post the price per container. Is that?
Yes,
what-
that's the section I was reading. So that's all interior, correct? That's not exterior.
Right. There's a whole other sign ordinance.
Okay, that's why
under
that's why I want to
64.
make sure. I just wanted to confirm that our existing sign ordinance, this does not preclude or replace any part of our existing sign ordinance for exterior advertising.
No, sir.
That was all interior.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I just
Laura?
have a comment.
Sure.
Section 4-84, public facilities event alcohol license. Earlier in the document, chapter 4, we had an indemnification clause that I really liked, but I don't see it again under that section. I guess that's a Ken question, which especially if we're allowing alcohol on our public property, I just want to be extra sure that we're held harmless and all the things that can go wrong when alcohol is served and people leave. The first time I saw it was back on page 45, and it's on page 45 is letter E.
There we go. Yep.
And it's there, but I don't know if it might also need to be when we are allowing that license on public property. It's just a suggestion, and perhaps I know there's a couple attorneys in the room. Just a suggestion.
Councilmember Bentley, my expectation would be is that if someone is going to utilize City of Milton space, they will likely enter into some sort of a written agreement with us for that space anyway, and that's where you would see the indemnity and hold harmless language.
Great.
think it would have to be a special event permit to be able to have it on our premises, which would require that, but it is a valid point.
Right.
Just want to make sure it's covered.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
So if there are no further questions, Tim, if you want to call for those first 9.
So, and just to clarify, we're going to call each individual and vote on each individual.
That's it.
Make sure with Ken.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, hold on a second, Lauren. Let me clarify that, and then if you got more, that's fine.
I do.
Do they have to do 9 individual votes, or can they vote once to approve all 9 zoning?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so the agenda, since it's identified each, so what I was comfortable with was the presentation covering all the agenda items. Let's don't do that again for everyone, obviously. But your votes, because it's a separate agenda header, you do need to make a motion for each agenda item to make the record clear.
Sorry.
So before you vote, I just want to make sure that we're clear on Councilmember Bentley's point.
You have questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Yeah, let's clarify the procedure, and then, so we're good. And then, Laura, you may have some questions that.
So, yeah, I do have more questions. It's about Chapter 4, not so much Chapter 64.
Right,
So
I'm
do you
going to
want
go
me
over the main changes in Chapter 4 after
we do
the zoning is
64.
voted on.
Okay. And then do we need to do public comment before Chapter 64?
I think we do. We may have some, yeah.
I think.
So, okay. I'll go ahead and, do we have any public comment now, Stacy? No? Okay, so I can close the hearing on this and.
Well, yes, I have some later in I do for the alcohol ordinance. I'm sorry?
But not on this item.
We'll
No,
do it
not
the
on
next
this
one.
item,
Okay.
no.
So you can call.
Okay, so just to clarify, we'll go through on you'll read each one individually. We'll vote on them first through 9, so.
So we don't have to make motions?
Yours is on 20.
I think we do.
We're going to do them individually, yes.
Okay.
All 9.
But, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
So, Ken?
just a point of order. So
Okay.
are we going to, I think we need to call each agenda item.
Right.
Right, we're going to call
Okay.
my understanding, we're going to call each agenda item. We're going to make a motion in a second, and we're going to
Okay.
vote on
Okay.
all 9 items.
I was thinking we were going on autopilot. I was a little worried about
No,
that.
no.
I know.
I guess I just wasn't sure
So
if there's public comment on
her
certain
public comment
agenda items only.
We may have a public, let's just
Of the
clarify,
rewrite.
Sarah and Tammy, with this public comment, where it would,
That's,
After,
yes.
not the zoning ones.
Not the zoning.
So they're
You-
going to vote on these 9. and
We're going to
then-
be on the,
Yep. So
The
don't talk
zoning
about 4.
is not what I'm affected by. Okay.
You're 4. Yes.
okay.
yes.
Okay, Tammy, yeah,
Okay.
you'll start with the first one.
Thank you. The next one is consideration of RZ 20-02, Section 64-395, uses prohibited in all districts. Agenda item number 20045. Next is a consideration of RZ 20-03, Section 64-7.
Tammy, I'm going to hold off.
Call each one individually.
Call each
Okay,
one,
we're
and
gonna
then
vote.
we're
I'm
going to
sorry.
vote. We're going to vote on each one. Just start at 1 and read 1, and then we're going to vote on that.
So she already read the first one.
I already
Okay.
read the first one.
All right, so I'm going to open up for a motion on the first one.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-044.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimous. Okay.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-045.
Second.
Does she have to read it?
Because I don't
called
know
that
that Tammy's read that one, correct?
Read it again, Tammy.
Consideration of RZ 20-02, Section 64-395, uses prohibited in all districts. Agenda item number 20045.
Okay, do I have a motion, Joe?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-045.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Ken, are we doing this the way that?
I think so. Just have one question.
Yeah. Go ahead. I understand, Joe, you probably just.
No. I thought when we announced at the beginning that we were going to be discussing all of these items together and then vote on them individually, that we could just move to vote on them individually.
We possibly
Without
can, but
reading.
just,
Yeah.
again, trying to.
We're good, Mr. Mayor.
Could you clarify that, please? We're good reading each item as we are?
We're good from the standpoint that you all are doing this exactly correctly.
Okay.
You've heard an overall presentation. You're now going through the agenda items. The only thing I wanted to catch and make sure was that when there's an agenda item that has public comment attached to it, that you are alerted to that, and the clerk has that well in hand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So, Tammy, if you could please read the next.
Yes, Mayor. Next will be consideration of RZ 20-03, Section 64-7521, mixed-use district permitted uses. Agenda item number 20046.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-046.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, Tammy, if you read the next one.
Our seventh item is consideration of RZ 20-04, Section 64-7751, Section 64-7752, permitted and accessory uses in C1, which is Community Business District. Agenda item number 20047.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-047.
I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, Tammy.
Next is consideration of RZ 20-05, Section 64-7981, Section 64-7982, permitted and accessory uses in C2, Community Business District. Agenda item number 20048.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-048.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria and a second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next
That's unanimous.
is consideration of RZ 20-06, Section 64-8951 and Section 64-8952, permitted and accessory uses in Community Unit Plan District. Agenda item number 20049.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-049.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Our 10th item is consideration of RZ 20-07, Section 64-1121, allowed use chart. Agenda item number 20-050.
I read it as 1112.
And at the beginning, we made the change.
Oh,
that the mayor
okay,
mentioned.
good. Thank you for correcting me.
Can we get a vote on that,
Yeah.
Mayor? Yeah.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-050.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Next is consideration of RZ 20-08, Section 64, Article, Article 19? I'm going to show my stumbling on that one. Crabapple, Form Base 6 Code 6-1 Definitions, Table 9, Agenda Item Number 20-051.
Okay, I have a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-051.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria, second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Tammy?
Number 12 is consideration of RZ 20-09, Section 64, Article 20, Deerfield Form Base Code 6-1 Definitions, Table 10. Agenda Item Number 20-052.
Okay.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item number 20-052.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
Mayor, I'll read our next item. We do have two public comments. One will be through Zoom, and we have one that is present
Okay,
here.
if you'll read
It's
that.
consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 4, Alcohol Beverages of the Code of the City of Milton, Georgia, Agenda Item Number 20-053.
Okay, I may go ahead and open up the public comment on that. You say you have two?
I do.
Okay, you want to do the Zoom comment first, Stacy?
Sure. We have Miss Judy Birds.
Hi, this is Judy Birds, again, 1165 Bream Drive in Milton, Georgia. I'm encouraged to see an attempt by the City of Milton to rewrite its codes. I would compliment the staff and those who worked on it in making the code much clearer and easier to understand and not a lot of need to jump around and inconsistent definitions. So compliments on getting that cleaned up. However, I find that the changes to add provisions for craft beer markets were helpful, but they do not put us in a position that allows us to compete with Roswell and their code for alcoholic beverages. So while the changes are necessary, I really don't feel that they're sufficient. Specifically regarding wine, there are provisions, for example, for craft beer markets to be able to sell a flight of beers, or for a restaurant to be able to sell a flight of beers. However, that same provision is not put in place for wine. So if you'd like to go to a nice restaurant and have a flight of wines, a small sampling of several, in a restaurant, you can get two. You can't get three. Also, two, we do not allow wine by the drink, although we allow beer by the drink in their appropriate markets. Those provisions are in the Roswell Code, and I think if we want to compete with Roswell, just south of us, we need to look to continue to work on this code and amend it to allow provisions that will allow us to be more competitive with our nearby neighbors.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and Tammy, if we have other public comment, please.
Yes, our next public comment will be from Pamela Jackson.
Joe, Mayor, council members, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I know that we have kind of had some communication going back and forth a little bit. It was our understanding when the rewrite of Chapter 4 was going to happen that it was trying to bring the laws on par with the state laws here, the ordinance on par with the state laws here. So really what I'm asking is that you just afford me the privileges under state law, which is beer, wine, and alcohol or spirits for consumption on premises. And I think part of what's going on is maybe there's a misunderstanding of what wineries and farm wineries are. All those farm winery questions you had, I can answer for you. But there is a huge difference in a farm winery and a winery. A farm winery actually has vineyards. It is a working farm that has vineyards, and it produces wine out of its own produce. There's a 40-60 law. 40% of what we make has to come from our produce, and 60% can come elsewhere. So we do import some of our grapes from other places. But again, like Sarah said, it is Georgia wine, even though there are grapes from California that we get. So I think there's a little bit difference. I am a bonded farm winery. I have a federal license, I have a state license, and I have the city license. I am bonded at the federal level and the state level. I have a federal officer that does inspections, and I have a state officer that watches over what we do. So I understand the concern about not wanting this to become a bar-type situation, but it's so far removed from that. One of the reasons that the state of Georgia, the main reason that the state of Georgia does allow the 3-tier sales is because it is such a huge and important part of the agritourism in Georgia. And so that's the big reason. It's really important. Let me get my thoughts here together. So there are only 35 bonded farm wineries in the state of Georgia, only 35. Milton has one of them right here, and that's a really big deal. It is an enormous expense to start a farm winery, believe me. It's an enormous expense, and one of the problems is until we have our wines, and we've started to bottle some, so that's exciting, but we still have a limited amount of our own wine to sell. Georgia wine, the average cost of a bottle of Georgia-made wine is $46. That's expensive. And so you have people coming in. I need to be able to offer something a little less expensive than that. I need to be able to offer beer because there's a lot of people that don't like wine, and you get couples coming in and one wants beer and you don't, and so you lose a lot of business that way. I need to be able to bring in the revenue. I have no intention of putting beer on tap in my place. I would like to be able to maybe have a light beer and another beer, and that's it, just so there's the opportunity for somebody to have something else, because I need to be able to bring in the revenue. And one of the other important things about this farm winery in particular, not only is it obviously the founding farm winery in Milton, I am the very first farm winery that Fulton County has had in its history. That's a huge deal, too, and the University of Georgia has been working with me because the thing is they don't know what we can grow here in this area, because when you go, I'm at 1,100 feet elevation. You go on up into North Georgia, it's 1,600 feet elevation, so the varietals and everything is different. The University of Georgia has been working with me, coming to my property, picking out the area where the next vineyard is going to go. We've got some in already, and what varietals we're going to put in. They're excited because let's see what we can do here. Never had that opportunity in Fulton County before, ever. So what I'm asking is, this is a big expense. I put everything I've got into this. I need to be able to keep myself afloat right now, and I cannot do it on Georgia wine. I simply cannot do it. It's too costly. I need to be able to offer something else, or I'm going under. And this is a big deal for Milton to have this. It's a huge deal for Milton to have this. And the other thing, the agricultural department, they're putting up the signs along the highway that says, winery, Milton, Georgia, and directing it right here. That's a huge thing, too. So I guess, and the other thing that I would like to add to that is, I've struggled a little bit. I know that we've had some communications going back and forth, and I appreciate those of you that have spoken to me. But you're making a decision here tonight that seriously and negatively impacts my business. And I guess what what kind of bothers me a little bit more than that is in that not one of you has come to see me. Not one of you has come by to see what I am doing over there. And it's big. And you're making a decision that's seriously affecting me, and I may go under if I can't do this. And you haven't even come to support me. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions? I mean, I don't know if I need to.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just doesn't, just comment, so thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
Not on this item, no, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and back with discussion. Sarah?
So the staff memo that came in the packet stated that I believe it's 18 the main changes that were made to the Chapter 4 on top of just reorganizing and putting things together in a more cohesive, understandable manner so that you're not going back and forth to sections. Those sorts of things were done. There's an Excel spreadsheet, like a chart. Keep going. Sorry. Keep going. One more. Keep going. There we go. Okay. So this chart has the first column is the page number that we're looking at, and the second is the actual ordinance number if we want to dive deeper into any of these. The first thing that Michelle suggested that we do is to state a purpose for the ordinance. Again, stating that we want people to consume alcohol responsibly. We do not want bars. That is the intent of the ordinance. The second was to add a bunch of definitions so that there's no question as to what things mean from the community development department to the finance department to the person coming in. It's very clear what we're talking about. And then we kind of get into some of the more fun ones. Registered agents, when you submit an application, you have to notate a registered agent. We had been hearing that some people's registered agents were in Forsyth, and that having one in Fulton wasn't always the easiest. So we asked the police chief what he thought about that, and he was comfortable with us kind of opening up that registered agent to any county that touches Fulton County. If we have to serve them, that we feel that we can manage that. A transfer license fee, we discussed this with council. So say Old Blind Dog wanted to move locations from here over to Deerfield, assuming that they still meet all of the zoning and distance requirements, they don't have to go through the complete application process again if they have a valid alcohol license. They would just have to pay the $100 transfer license fee. Additional Sunday sales fee. This is something that a lot of our neighboring cities do. It's just a revenue stream that we were missing out on. So starting to do that. The creation of a grand opening annual promotion permit, I really like this one. It came about from a business calling to see if they could serve beer at one of their, at an open house. And normally we're not out looking for that, but because they asked, I had to tell them that, no, you cannot serve your patrons beer and wine without a permit. So this allows for any establishment, whether it's a clothing boutique or a law office, to once a year for 4 hours come in and get a free permit to serve beer and wine. Just so we know what's going on, they're doing it legally, and everybody is happy. The temporary license fee, this is another one that other people charge for that we haven't in the past. So this is a 90-day, if you come in and in all good faith we feel that you will be receiving your permanent license, because it's good for 3 months, and that's 25% of a year, it will be 25% of the fee that we anticipate you paying for that temporary license fee, again, generating revenue. The next one, 45 or 4-75, is to allow restaurants to sell incidental packaged beer and wine. This came about because of our current pandemic situation. People have enjoyed getting a bottle of wine or a 6-pack with their to-go. I spoke with Milton Wine and Crystal about this and how, as a wine retailer, how he would feel about this being a thing that's permitted. So we put some kind of stipulations into that one that the to-go wine and beer has to be the same price that it is on your menu. You can't discount it. And then also it's the same laws Merlot to go, like 1 bottle of wine per patron or package of beer, just so that you don't have a restaurant impeding on our local wine markets and their sales. Down to 478E, our limited service restaurant. This is allowing that 70-30 food to alcohol ratio. Like I stated multiple times throughout this ordinance, we state that this is we prohibit bars in Milton. There's a stipulation that a restaurant, 40% of the total gross has to be seating, so that limits the opportunity for dance floor spaces, things like that. Limited service restaurants also, because of the brunch bill by state law, they cannot sell on Sunday. And the next, limited tap establishments. We only have one of those, so in doing this, I called over to Whitetail Bike Shop to see if there was anything that needed to be done, and he asked if he could have a 5th tap. So it was 4, and now we're asking for 5. And then Michelle pointed out that our requirement of it being brewed within 50 aerial miles could be seen as, what's the word?
It's a constitutional issue, basically.
Like we're saying that some people can't participate. So we're using the word craft because that's a small brewed, that's a more easily defined, but we're not saying that if you brewed 55 miles away that you can't be there. 4-85 is what we've been discussing to make farm wineries Georgia wine only. 4-91, that's our open container district up at Birmingham Crossroads. If you remember in 2017, I believe, when we were reworking the crabapple map, Councilmember Longoria said, well, why don't we go ahead and make Deerfield and Birmingham Crossroads open container too? So we did, but in that, we didn't think about what happens if the entrance to an establishment is within the special district, but perhaps the boundaries of the establishment extend beyond it. So what this is now allowing is if the entrance to your establishment is within a special district, your entire establishment, regardless of where it stops, would be considered open container. We revised the time of day of sales to match the state. The pouring permits, this one affects our servers mostly. It's the $60 fee that they go in and they pay for a server's permit. Currently, they have to renew it annually. This will allow it to be good for 2 years. So brown bagging is allowed by right. There's no need to apply to that. So, and we address that in the Merlot to go section, which is being able to take that sealed bottle of wine home with you if you didn't finish it at dinner. 4-138, we removed happy hour restrictions. So currently you can only offer those discounts between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. We just deleted that sentence. In looking at the special event permits, our neighbors charge more. So we didn't think that it was right so we were charging $100 whether you were just a for-profit or if it was a nonprofit. We didn't feel it was right to raise the fee for the nonprofit, but we did see it as an opportunity to raise it for the other people from $100 to $250. And then the addition of our breweries and microbreweries and city food markets and craft beer and wine markets are all in there as well. If there are any questions, we can dive further into those.
I would like to open up some discussion and could consider some supported changes on 4-85 with the farm wineries if council wants to discuss, and also get some, staff and legal. When we talk about, I know we have one in Milton right now, but what the possibility of on, with serious checks and balances and whatnot, but have some flexibility with other alcohol, just maybe as complementary, but not, again, I'd want to ask for some guidance and also if there's any interest with council, but, maybe with restrictions, but to be able to do that to, again, it is kind of new, uncharted territory here. So first I'll ask, does the council have any interest in discussing that?
I do.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sure. Yes, sure.
Okay. So again, I'll open that up, and I guess I would go legal or, Sarah and Steve on if we were to do that in a limited way, can you put parameters on that to where I know the big concern is so it doesn't just open up AG1 and you have a big bar. I've got a barn or whatever. Could I have a farm and all of a sudden it just become a bar? So I know we don't want that, but looking kind of there's some legitimate ways that could help a business, within reason, but have some checks and balances there. So any thoughts on that, Laura?
Is there an incidental license specific to other, drinks? It doesn't say, when I read it, I couldn't find that exactly. So I don't know how you would.
I mean, maybe even if it's a percentage type thing.
So, Mr. Mayor, let me start with at least the sort of the legal foundation with respect to this, and it's sort of a regurgitation of what I've provided some of you all with respect to this question being asked previously. But so the generic question that was presented was could a farm winery even qualify for an on-premise consumption license for spirits and beer? And the answer is yes. However, the Milton Code as it exists now anticipates that it will still have to have a restaurant providing the sorts of percentages of mix of food versus alcohol that you have traditionally seen in the city. That's fine. And is there a likelihood that a farm winery could in fact have a robust farm winery, agricultural, growing the grapes, et cetera, business with also a pure ancillary restaurant that is meeting these percentages? Absolutely. The problem you also got, though, in addition to just alcohol and the notion of alcohol service, is also your zoning code. And the point that I emphasized in my correspondence to you is, at what point does the agricultural use, if you're looking at sort of things on a continuum, say almost a needle, you've got your agricultural use, the farm winery, right? But at some point when you begin to blanch into the commercial sale of alcohol as being sort of the important operation that is being conducted on the business, when have you converted the alcohol sales from ancillary to the agricultural operation on the property to primary? And that is another issue that you all are going to have to address, and that is a matter of public policy. So, Mr. Mayor, you started the conversation by asking, is it possible, or is it doable, or is it yes, it is conceivable, and of course we could draft language that would allow that sort of a use, but I do think you need to look at the bigger public policy implications, and I don't mean to suggest that you haven't. I'm just raising those for you. And secondly, I think we would have to add some criteria to make sure that we keep a handle to ensure that agricultural property continues to be used for primarily an agricultural purpose, and which was sort of the thrust of the guidance that I gave you, is that, at some point you just have to watch that, because you begin to make the ancillary use begins to become the primary use. And I think that is one of the things that was of concern.
Sure, and again, I'll just throw my thoughts out. I totally respect and understand that. Basically, a farm winery, their agricultural use, I assume, would be growing grapes and producing wine.
Correct.
I see Ken's point of that getting and as not the main business or whatever, but maybe it's something where we consider something where you sell X number of, I think it was mentioned 60% anyways has to come from Georgia, or from the wine has to be sold or produced there. Then maybe any drinks like alcohol or spirits or beer is a small percentage of that. To your point about the restaurant or whatnot, I know I've been visited some wineries in Georgia where they sell a prepackaged cheese plate or something like that, to where you do have some food or whatever. It doesn't require a full-blown kitchen, that kind of thing, but it does kind of serve that purpose of having some food sales too. So I'm just throwing that out. So again, I'll open up to any other comments or
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Carol, and then Joe.
So, Ken, I don't mean to be obtuse here, but let me ask this question. So, is the hang-up here the alcoholic component of the product? Because on my farm, I could presumably grow corn, and I could sell corn, and people would eat the corn. And that's an agricultural purpose. I mean, grapes it's agriculture. And it creates a product just like if I grew corn. So other than the fact that we have that piece of the code, when we talk about whether AG1, we want it to relate in that way, in the way that we're discussing, it's agriculture. I mean, that's what we want. Where's the constraint? Is it specifically just because of alcohol?
Well, no, I don't think it's specifically alcohol. I think it is the function of a commercial enterprise on a piece of agricultural property. So in your example with respect to the corn, you do sell the corn, but what if you had then a corn restaurant, and as a byproduct of that, you got a consumption for alcohol on the premises license, and that in fact began to become your primary cash cow for your piece of property. What is your property? Is it still agricultural or is it commercial? What is in fact driving the economic model that is making your piece of property viable? Those are planning questions. I'm not suggesting that we can't figure them out. I'm just suggesting
I'm just trying to
those
understand
are
that.
challenging questions. How do we maintain the integrity of our agricultural zoning when in fact in your corn, thank you for that, I'm having fun with it, but in your corn scenario, we could open the restaurant, begin to sell alcohol, and sure enough, before too long, that component begins to eclipse the corn component. When does the primary use become ancillary and the ancillary use become primary? That is the question. And again, it's driven by your code as it exists right now. I'm not trying to really interpret the code that you all may adopt because I got the question based upon your old code. I'm simply suggesting it did present a concern to me. I understood the rationale behind the question that was raised. And if the council wants to tackle it, if you're asking me, do I think it can be tackled? I do.
Okay, and could you, before I yield, could you just revisit what we were talking about earlier? And by the way, with my corn, I would have a still, okay?
It would be
moonshine.
moonshine.
I would supply you the liquor. Okay,
from
so
Tennessee,
we would have
yeah.
free trade among us. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Would you revisit the state regulations that were referenced earlier? Like the overarching, the backdrop on this issue from the state?
And actually, it's funny, the city manager and I were discussing that. I mean, and I think actually the speaker probably would be able to articulate those standards even better than I can. Obviously, she's living and breathing it. But I do agree that I think the state carefully monitors that. In other words, I don't think Milton would be inundated with a bunch of pretextual farm wineries that aren't really doing that. I suspect the speaker would come up and say, it's too heavily regulated for this to be a fiction, and what I really want to do is run a restaurant. Because I suspect to get those certifications from the state is a fairly onerous, time-consuming, heavily regulated, document-intensive process.
Okay, Joe?
So Sarah,
Yes.
if there's parallels or overlaps between what the state regulates from a farm winery and what the city of Milton regulates from a farm winery, I'm guessing that we don't so much regulate as we control what the property is really being used for. In other words, we don't have a lot of language in our ordinance that talks about how you own, operate, inspect, or deal with the production of the wine at a farm winery.
No, sir.
Okay? So our focus has really been more, okay, if you're going to be a farm winery, let's just make sure you're a farm winery, right? And we're trying not just to use, another comparison, not the corn comparison. We don't want to cross the streams between what somebody has told us that they want to do with their property and what they actually do with their property. That's pretty much a carpet statement for a blanket statement for anything. We didn't have any language, or you didn't present any language that would lead me to believe that we changed the language or what we said about farm wineries in all these revisions that we've made. That's a fair statement, right? Because otherwise you would have called out on page 48, we changed this to this. So in building up to this, and I'm guessing it's because we're not trying to regulate the actual operation of the winery. We're just trying to make sure that, they're doing what they say they do. So did we give any consideration to farm wineries, their impact, or how maybe we needed to change what we were writing in our ordinance?
So it was presented, I believe, at the first work session because I spoke with Ms. Jackson and she asked for us to look at this, and I said that I would bring it to council for your consideration. And at that time when I said, what would you like for them to be able to serve at a farm winery, it was very clear that council's view is that it should be Georgia wine. So what we really added to this was to very clearly state that it was Georgia wine, not any wine from anywhere, as the state allows.
Okay. So, and jumped ahead a question. The first question I really wanted to ask is, if we didn't specify any changes that we've made to the ordinance as part of this, how long has our ordinance been in effect the way it is? And how long have we just been trying to deal with farm wineries the way we are? It's a trick question.
Since
It's probably
2006?
2006. Exactly.
Did we have farm wineries? We didn't have farm wineries in the beginning.
Not in the very beginning,
I
no.
think the
That was
statute
added
I don't
back
think the statute
whenever I,
was in 2006. It was after that.
2014?
I believe it was 2014 whenever I added it for the first time, when I did the rewrite
Well,
initially.
But we wouldn't have prohibited their existence, right? Just because we didn't have anything in an ordinance, we didn't specifically call it out and prohibit it.
You wouldn't have just been able to start selling wine from your house prior.
No, but if you were a winery, if you were growing grapes and producing wine, you could have done that, right?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's probably on a jurisdiction by
Okay, so
jurisdiction basis.
2014 is what we're saying?
I believe so.
I believe
Okay.
so, yeah.
So we haven't changed the rules since 2014.
Right.
All right. Whether or not those rules need to be changed, they haven't changed. So any business that's operating under this guise understands what they're dealing with, right? You mentioned that you had conversations, and those didn't necessarily lead us to believe that something additional needed to be done. The council gave you guidance basically stating, hey, if it's going to be a farm winery, we want it to serve Georgia wine, and that's what we want the focus to be, correct?
That was the conversation at the work session.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just stating the obvious to make sure we cover all the bases.
Okay.
Okay, so, but we've got a situation where there's potentially some additional work that needs to be done. The mayor already suggested it. I think other people mentioned that they would be interested. To me, I don't think we should ever be scared about discussing anything once, twice, or three times. So I would be in favor of talking about that. My biggest worry is that if serving other alcoholic beverages at a farm winery is the difference between success or failure, then we're really not a farm winery. Something else is going on that I don't understand, and that's what I'd really like to get to the bottom of, is trying to understand what are the challenges. Are we putting up some kind of barriers between success and failure for somebody who operates a farm winery that we just don't understand that we're doing? And so, and hopefully it's just not the, menu.
Right.
So, all right.
Paul?
Sort of tag on what Joe was just saying. And the farm winery has a legal definition.
Yes.
And in its descriptors, that's probably regulated by the state and federal level. So our ability to try to administer that here, in my mind, we need to stay pretty strictly to the definition of a farm winery. And I just as a personal preference would say I don't like it when we try to legislate for a one-off. I would rather that we have a standard legislation that addresses it as it was intended, but then address it if it's something that we want to encourage or have or endorse or support in Milton, that we find a way either through special use permit or a redefinition of something within those parameters that doesn't change the definition of it, but recognizes it for what it is. And we create either a special use permit or another way to manage it so we can accommodate the business and not preclude it, but not put ourselves in harm's way unintentionally by trying to redefine something that already has a definition.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to engage in further conversation about that so we can support this business in Milton.
Okay. Peyton?
Yeah, to go on Paul's point, have we discussed with Ms. Jackson all the use permits and stuff?
So that was the email from Ken that because the farm winery has to be the primary use of the property, it also cannot be a special event facility because the special event permit is the primary use of it.
Milton's code right now anticipates that a farm winery can get a consumption on the premise license for the selling of distilled spirits and beer, malt beverages. But it also says to do that, you need to comply with the on-premise consumption language of Milton's code, which of course is the 50% food requirement. So that's the point. So could a farm winery have a restaurant? Absolutely. Could they sell beer and wine? Sure. Or beer, wine, and distilled spirits? Absolutely. But everything I'm hearing this evening suggests that's not the business model that this individual can make work, to Councilmember Longoria's point. So your code already anticipates this. It just sets a bar or a hurdle right now that I think is challenging for the individual that is requesting the relief.
So would it be possible to change the business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And then apply for whatever use permit we want? Okay.
And again, that's the sort of thing
Okay.
my experience has been. That's where you get with the individual stakeholders that are implicated by it and tell them what would work, what makes sense, and then bring you back options.
Okay. Laura, I think you had
No, I was just going to agree with what Councilmember Moore said, because I recall the hearing and approving the farm winery, and through all of this, that was what I was approving on that night. So I would also like to encourage the special use route to try to accommodate the business and make sure that it can be successful, which I think I'm hearing is a possibility. Is that right?
They could get a special event facility license. So if you look at, it's on page 61, so 485, C5, it's the special event alcohol license or event facilities license. Nothing in this section shall be deemed to prohibit a farm winery from obtaining appropriate licenses or permits to allow special events and to provide alcohol in conjunction with such licenses as permitted by state law and city ordinance. So they could apply to be a special event facility.
And that would trigger the public process, and that would go through all of the. Is that the way
Yes.
it works? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that
I just
that
wanted
goes
to-
through the community development department.
Okay, so that's one possibility.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't impose other undue hardship because we're trying to, again, do a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
I need to do something that's even different from that.
I'm just going to ask a simple question, and I'm just trying to be practical. Ken, and I understand, all sides of it or whatever, I think. And obviously, if it's a farm winery, it should be producing the wine and however you get the grapes, but, fit the guidelines. Mm-hmm. But, it is a, quote, farm winery. We don't want it to be a bar or a restaurant or whatever. But, Ken, is there a possibility, just like a lot of different businesses have or ordinances where, it's 60%, 70%, a winery or their wine, and then maybe, 30% other things that are, an accessory or whatever to help the business? Is that feasible to do? Could we craft something here that and it also meets state guidelines? Is that feasible to do?
I believe that you could.
And I'll tell you, the only reason I'm bringing this up, I'm just putting it all out there. Milton's different, and I don't see Johns Creek, Roswell, Sandy Springs, Alpharetta having any farm wineries. So sometimes, and I also don't see, the biggest thing we hear are people complaining about land getting sold and gone and subdivisions going up. So I don't think it's going to be everybody with a farm is going to open up a bar or go through everything to set up a winery. So I do think that this is important. It sets us up different. That I'm certainly willing to step up and make some decisions that if it makes something like this viable, I'm willing to step and do it. So I don't know if this is something that we can craft tonight, Ken, or whatever, or what the process would be, how the process would be on farm wineries as far as this item are.
Well, if we're going to talk about looking at the farm winery provisions of the code that's in front of you this evening and possibly backing out or somehow crafting language that would allow a specific business model for this unique business in Milton to go forward, I don't think we need to craft the language this evening. Okay. I would recommend that we go forward this evening. The council give direction for staff to work with this individual and then bring you back something that we can do in a sort of a more regimented, constructive manner. And we're happy to do that, of course.
No, that's just my thoughts. Anybody else is council interested in doing something like that?
I am.
Yeah, I would echo Ken's thoughts. I don't think we should try to legislate on the fly
Yeah.
and create something tonight, but I think it's appropriate for us to go forward with what is before us with the direction from council and mayor to investigate something further that accommodates the individual business request.
Okay, but rest of council, good with that?
Yep.
Okay,
I don't need a motion on that. I think I've got the idea.
sure, but, so, clarify, so what we would do, we would vote on what's in front of us.
That's right.
But then staff could bring back some changes to this one specific item.
That's right.
And council, all right, so we'll talk about that if you guys are good with that. Okay.
Questions? Yes, sir.
So one of the speakers talked about the flight of wines. Is that, I
I'm,
mean, because I would say, I'm sure we have that in this ordinance. I mean, we got everything else.
Right.
You know,
What's that?
the flight of wines.
the flights of wine.
The first speaker in the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to, I'm not sure exactly what the prohibition, or where there's a prohibition against it.
Has to do with the number of drinks that can be served to a patron at a time.
Right, but typically a flight of, when you do a flight, it's not full glasses, so when you think about what is one drink is 6 ounces of wine. So I could do 3 2-ounce samples.
So our language spells it out in terms of volume.
I was just looking to, I was trying to remember where that is.
Can we ask her to come up and speak into the microphone?
Absolutely.
Oh. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You have that section, Sarah.
I don't know which section it is.
That's what I was looking at too. I didn't, when she mentioned that, I was trying to remember where she was referring to.
I think it's where the brew pubs, where you can
If you're looking
taste the
specifically
different.
for where flight is listed,
Yes.
I can help you with that.
Oh, you can
Yes.
search.
Thanks.
So it's listed in 2 places in the ordinance, under brewery. Brewery means a domestic manufacturing facility for beer that is licensed by the state. Provided licenses are issued as required by the state in this chapter, a brewery is authorized to sell beer by the package or by the drink and to operate flight tastings on premise for the brewery pursuant to state law. The second one is under distillery. Distillery means a domestic manufacturing facility for distilled spirits that is licensed by the state. Provided that licenses are issued as required by this chapter, a distillery is authorized to sell distilled spirits by the package, by the drink, and to operate flight tastings on premises of the distillery as provided for and subject to the limitations of state law.
So is this a distillery? That's not wine though. That's liquor.
That's
right?
liquor.
Right, and so you also
Yeah,
have
2
to.
out of 3 covered.
But I think here the distinction is that we're talking about distilleries and breweries are manufacturers. They are not on-premise consumption retailers. And so what these are doing is these are saying, here is the limited exception to what you can provide in a manufacturing. And so these were based upon the state law. So generally, an on-premise consumption retailer or a retailer that's permitted to sell alcohol for on-premise consumption, being able to do a flight is not going to be prohibited. That's where the distinction is. These are manufacturing facilities as opposed to retail facilities. And your craft beer and craft wine markets specifically anticipate the ability to sell craft beers and wine for consumption on premise as well as for consumption off premise. So that's where I don't think that there would be a.
I think she's talking about the ancillary beer wine tasting license.
Okay.
And that is on page 48, 49, section 4-78. So number 3. So it's limiting the samples to, so it's 4-78A3, beer and/or wine sampling for patrons shall not exceed 2 ounces per sample, and no patron shall consume more than 8 ounces in any 2-hour period.
But again, that would allow for a flight, if you will, of wine.
Yep.
So I think there may just be some confusion when we use the term flight. It's basically saying that any brewery or distillery, you're not going to be able to go and just get unlimited amounts of, I'm not going to be able to get 12-ounce beers and try 4 or 5 different 12-ounce beers. So I think there may be some confusion there.
So the flights are only done, like, a restaurant can't do it unless they produce it on premise.
No, you can, I mean.
Oh,
it's-
good, okay.
Yeah, so it's really, it's a way to allow patrons to sample.
Just making sure. I mean, he's laughing.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure we're okay in that.
Yeah, so a
Okay.
restaurant would be permitted. It's just like I could give you, I could, as long as I'm not giving you 4 glasses of
All right.
wine
Okay.
all at one time.
That sounds good.
So it's more based on the volume, you know.
Right.
4
Does say 2 ounces,
1
right?
ounces versus 2 ounces or whatever, but.
Okay, you answered my question. As long as we
You can still order 4 full glasses of wine if you'd like to pay for 4 full glasses of wine.
I did that in Auburn.
One at a time.
One at a time, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm clear on that. So is there, I just have so where did I never saw anything in here about walk-up windows. Are those in here? Chapter 4?
We didn't put them in.
We
No,
didn't,
we didn't put
okay.
that in.
That was one thing that came up, I remember, and then also alcohol-infused items. I didn't see anything in there.
So the alcohol-infused items, the way that we addressed that was by including it in the definitions. So anything that is infused with alcohol is considered to be an alcoholic consumable. And so the reference is basically anytime you refer to alcoholic beverages, it will, by definition, include alcohol consumables. So you can't just sneak in these alcohol consumables and not get a license and not get approval for them.
That's what my concern was.
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
like the seltzers and the.
No.
This is your infused truffles that
Truffles.
have, a high concentration of bourbon, or your
Okay.
ice cream that has, the alcohol in it that hasn't been cooked off. I might make a cake and I might put alcohol in it, but it gets cooked off. But when we have something that in its edible content contains that concentration of alcohol, then it's considered to be a consumable, and it's by definition in the ordinance now included, so you can't sneak it in.
Okay. But do we address the others? I can't remember what we called it last time I asked this question. It's like hard ciders, the seltzers that are all alcohol based. Some of them are malt beverages and some of them are ciders. Are those?
They are.
Okay.
So in the definitions, that's one of the reasons why we expanded the definitions, so that we could broaden some things and then also be clear that we're covering everything that might be out there.
Great.
There's even some honey-based products now, so just to make sure that they're all included within the definitions.
Great.
And those are modeled after the state definitions as well.
Laura?
So as we move from 50-50, the ratio, to 70-30, I just am curious to know what other communities are at that ratio and what they might be, if you know of any examples.
So I'll tell you where this is coming up, and I'm actually dealing less with other communities and more with the Department of Revenue on this issue. The recognition has been that 50-50 is somewhat of an anomaly because as we're getting more people interested in high-end alcohol, craft alcohol, I might order a $25 steak with a $50 bottle of wine. And that's not a 50-50 concept. The whole idea of 50-50 was to prevent bars. We want to have people that are restaurants or really operating restaurants. But unfortunately, I could have a $5 pitcher of margaritas and a $6 taco, and all of a sudden I'm not a bar anymore, I'm a restaurant. So to address that, the state is looking at changing the 50-50 requirement. Where the 50/50 really comes into play is, one is in the definition of a restaurant, and two is whether or not you can sell alcohol on Sundays. By state law, you can't sell alcohol on Sundays unless you're an eating establishment. An eating establishment is a business that has 50/50 food to beverage ratios. So kind of in anticipation of that, we had, in some of our early discussions, we had said, let's go ahead and adopt a limited service type or a limited type of license, where that 50/50 isn't going to be precluding a business from being able to be called a restaurant, where all of a sudden they're now called a bar just because I have really expensive spirits, but I also am always selling them with a big meal. So that's where we brought it in. The anticipation is that hopefully this will evolve, and as the state also evolves, that those restaurants eventually would be able to sell alcohol on Sundays.
So where are we as a city on this, in this movement? Are we on the...
On the front end.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know that.
Yeah, you're on a very safe ground, but you're on the front end of it. Because nobody else is really, it's not real public that this is something that these discussions are going on, but it is, these discussions have been being had. There's a recognition that the intent of the regulation is not actually really being brought to fruition.
So do you think we'll have a flash mob here of, and if we do, I see Chief Austin back there. Are we good from the police force? And
I can tell you probably if you go,
that established.
if you go by history, usually Milton has been on the front edge of doing a lot of things, and all our sister cities end up following us. So.
No, I support that. My other question
I would anticipate that.
No, and I know that you have guided us through this whole process, which gives me a great deal of comfort. As far as city staff, do we anticipate any additional headcount to, deal with all these licenses that are going to be coming in?
So one thing that I've discussed, because Bernadette, we spoke earlier, that at least for the foreseeable future, when somebody comes in for one of these unique licenses, they will just schedule an appointment with me.
Okay.
And that's at least for the first handful, that's how we'll handle it.
We don't anticipate needing additional resources to manage this.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, so where are we, Sarah? We're at a point where...
Yeah, I'm waiting for questions.
Okay. Any more questions? Do we have any public comment, or other than we did public comment? I closed the hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. I would just like to clarify, I guess, so basically we'll put this up for a vote, what's before us, and then the council has directed staff to look at making some changes, possible changes to the farm winery. What would the timing, just curious, what would the timing on something be on that?
I think we can move quite quickly on it.
We have a work session next Monday, right?
I don't even think we'll need a work session.
Okay.
I think you and I could sit down tomorrow, talk a little bit about this. You could sit down with Ms. Jackson, figure out exactly what her needs look like, and we can get something back before you quite quickly. And this isn't even zoning, so it's just Chapter 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could turn around quite quickly as long as it's. I think I have a general understanding of where your heads are.
Okay. All right. Anything else, or I'll open up for a motion.
Well, tell me exactly what we're voting on at this point.
We're voting on the
What's
two
presented,
items that we just reviewed.
Chapter 4.
And we've carved out the fact that additional work will be
On
done
this
as a
one.
follow-up activity.
Okay.
Yeah, we're voting on as is, but then direction to make some, look at making some changes. Okay, I'll open up for a motion. Might as well.
Mayor,
Every
I
alcohol
move that we approve
motion
agenda
was from
item
Joe.
number 20-053.
Second.
And was seconded by Peyton. Starting to wonder about you guys. All right, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Jameson. Any discussion? I just want to add, thanks for the open discussion that council had, and considered some changes if we think it's in the best interest of Milton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
There an appendix?
One more.
Isn't there
One more.
an
Next
appendix?
item.
We have
So,
one more.
yeah.
We need to read the next item.
Yep.
Next item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Appendix A related to Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages of the Code of the City of Milton, Georgia. Agenda item number 20-054.
So this is what we charge people for things, the revenue generation part of the purpose of the rewrite. If you look through it, the red lines are things that have changed. I think I mentioned the new fees while we were going through Chapter 4. There is a manufacturing license. So in addition to fees for the breweries and distilleries, if they want to have consumption on premises, retail, they'll still have to get those. But then there's a $250 or $500 fee associated on top of that. Same thing with the craft beer and wine market and limited service restaurant. There's a fee for the opportunity to conduct business in that way. The pouring permit is every 2 years now. We do have excise taxes. We didn't have breweries and microbreweries in the past or distilleries, so there will be excise taxes on any beverages produced at those establishments. We did increase the penalty for late excise tax payments from 10% to 15%. And those are the fee changes.
Okay. Questions on those or comments?
Is that consistent around? Okay.
With our neighbors and such. The distributor, the wholesale license, while it is significantly more in some of our neighboring cities, we looked at the number of restaurants in the neighboring cities compared to ours and adjusted the prices accordingly, because it's not fair if they're able to deliver to hundreds of restaurants in Alpharetta and a handful in Milton that they be charged the same amount. So we looked at all of that and did it proportionally.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have any public comment on this?
This was just the only other item that Ms. Jackson had on.
I think I'm good. I don't think I need to say anything anymore, do I?
No.
It's up to you. Yes,
Everybody
you're
wants to hang out
good.
here late.
While you're ahead. Quit while you're
All right.
ahead.
All right, I'll close the public hearing on that. Any other questions? I'll open up for a motion. Joe?
Yeah.
Payton?
That we approve agenda item number 20-054.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria.
Give it to
with a
Carol.
Second from Councilmember Cookerly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimous. So,
Thank you.
thank you. I know it's a lot of work, Sarah. Okay, let's move on to new business. Tammy, if you'll please read the next item.
Our first item is consideration of a resolution appointing members to the City of Milton Citizens Advisory Committee for the City of Milton 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Agenda item number 2159.
Okay, this is under my name, but I guess I'm going to have to defer to staff on this. Unless it's,
Parag, it's going to have to be you.
This is just us voting to approve the.
It is.
Appointees.
yeah, but if you want to, I don't have the appointees in front of me, so
You don't have it? All right.
I can find it.
Let me, I will handle it, Parag. I apologize.
No, but again, just want to give an introduction.
Yeah.
This resolution is basically we are starting the process of the city's 2040 comprehensive plan, and as per the city's charter, we need to constitute a citizens advisory committee, and on the citizens advisory committee, each city council member has to appoint one committee member. And we have received the committee members from all the city council members. So this resolution is basically looking to appoint all the appointees of the city council. On the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, all the Planning Commission members are also there, and also the chairs of the DRB and the BZAs are also there. So it's as part of the city's charter that we have to appoint this Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. I do not have the appointees.
I have it.
I actually do have it. I just hadn't pulled it out, so.
So with Parag's introduction, at this point, I believe we have all of the names on that resolution, and then I guess at a future time, in a more safe manner, we will swear all of them in.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to read the names off if, we've got the existing names, and then the 7 council appointees are Marty Littleton as my appointee, Heather Sparks as Councilmember Jameson's appointee, Brian Maloney from Councilmember Cookerly, Colt Whittall from Councilmember Bentley, Larry Johnstone from Councilmember Moore, Mark Arrington from Councilmember Longoria, and George, is it Eunice, I believe, from Councilmember Moorick. So is there any questions or comments on this? Then we'll go ahead and open that up for a motion then.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-159.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore. Any discussion? Hearing.
Oh, I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to thank these appointees because this
Sure.
is a 18-month process.
yeah.
So thank you very much if you're watching.
Mm-hmm. Nope, absolutely. Echo that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, Tammy, if you'll please call the next item.
Our next item is consideration of a resolution to enter into a cooperation agreement between the City of Milton and Fulton County to continue participation in the Fulton County Community Development Block Grant Program for the program years 2021, 22, and 2023. Agenda item number 2160.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I will address this one with you very briefly. I don't need to come to the podium, I don't think. You have in your agenda packet a proposed CDBG agreement. I believe that Fulton County has requested that we sign off on this agreement, not necessarily join in, but certainly sign off on it, and they have requested that we do so basically by the end of this week. So the question was posed to my office, is this a good thing or a bad thing, or is it sort of an in-the-middle thing? And the question or the answer is it is perfectly fine. A lot of jurisdictions, of course, participate in CDBG grant programs. Fulton County's request to the City of Milton is not unusual, and of course we have done it in the past. The only question that was asked was specifically, do we become subject to requirements that, and when I say requirements, let me be clear, federal-based requirements as a signatory with respect to CDBG resolutions that we otherwise would not be. And to distill it as quickly as I can, the answer is yes. We become subject to one tier of requirements if we simply sign on as sort of a co-applicant or co-signer, if you will. Now, if we actually receive specific funding from the CDBG opportunities, we will actually have to sign yet another agreement, which in fact makes us subject to even more exacting federal requirements. So if the question is are we going to be subject to requirements that we aren't subject to necessarily right now, the answer is yes and yes, depending upon the level of participation there is in any of these dollars actually flowing to the City of Milton. So just for purposes of, and I will tell you, by the way, council members, I have had these discussions before. In fact, at one point, I was in a jurisdiction and they were about to get some money for a trail, and I was going to show them the reams of all the federal requirements they were going to be subject to for the money. And as soon as I began to get about 5 minutes into it, their eyes glazed over and I heard them say free money, and that was the end of the point hunt. They immediately passed a resolution saying we're in, right? So I understand how this works. These requirements are not onerous. The county and the city agree to cooperate and undertake or assist in undertaking community renewal and lower income housing assistance activities. The city acknowledges that it has adopted and is enforcing a policy prohibiting the use of excessive force by law enforcement agencies within its jurisdiction against any individuals engaged in nonviolent civil rights demonstrations. The city acknowledges that it has adopted and is enforcing a policy of enforcing applicable state and local laws against physically barring entrance to or exit from a facility or location which is the subject of a nonviolent civil rights demonstration. The county and the city will take all actions necessary to ensure compliance with the county's certification under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Fair Housing Act, affirmatively furthering fair housing, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. The point simply is, yes, those are out there. Most of those we are complying with already, and certainly we have robust compliance measures because we've received federal financing and federal funding before, so these are not foreign concepts to us. So I don't want to bog you down in that, and I'm not sure what the likelihood of us receiving a lot of federal dollars from this CDBG programming is at this point anyway. I'm comfortable with it, but I do at least want to raise these issues to you so you know. There's always the specter out there of federal compliance audit. I will tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen one occur before, and I think it would take something fairly significant or pernicious by the government to actually be subject to one, but I do at least want to raise it to you. I'm comfortable if you want to approve this, and it may make good sense to, just to keep the lines of communication open with Fulton County, but I do at least want to go over these issues. Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Yeah, we've obviously had signed this before, but is there any questions or Joe and then new staff?
We have signed this before. How have we benefited from that?
Steve, I'll let you answer that one.
I'm in an open forum, so I'll pull my answer back as best I can. We tried very hard this last round to benefit from CDBG funding. I've been involved with CDBG over my entire career, and we had some great programs that we had lined up for different abled children involving equestrian therapy. We were trying to work through another program where we were going to help some of our kids who couldn't afford to get into programming. It was made very clear that I was going to have a better chance of spinning straw into gold and getting any money out of that CDBG program. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time putting those programs together, and it was a brick wall every time.
Is this one of those things that the window of opportunity is open for us right now and it closes if we don't sign, and it won't open again until 2023?
Well, yes and no. We could apply to the DCA and compete at the state level for CDBG funds. But we do, correct me if I'm wrong, once we apply at the state level for DCA, CDGB funds, we're still subject to the same regulations. It doesn't matter whether we do it through Fulton County or the state. So really there are two things I think that's important you know. First, our population adds to their benefit. So they'll take our 40,000 population, it'll add dollars to what they're able to get. The second is, and I haven't been able to confirm this, is the CARES Act money. Fulton County just recently got $1.1 million in CARES Act dollars. I'm being told by Fulton County that for us to participate in that, we have to participate in CDBG. Now, I did some quick research. I went through HUD and all that, and I did some research on the CARES Act. I can't find the connection, but the person that I've been dealing with has been very knowledgeable, and I have no reason to believe that she wouldn't be telling me the truth.
So, Stephen, do you think that there is some type of missed opportunity if we don't sign?
Maybe from a relationship standpoint.
That's what I would say, with the county.
All right, so the benefit for us approving and signing is that we keep our relationship with Fulton County intact, but we shouldn't expect to get any monetary benefit from this.
Except maybe CARES Act dollars, but if it's falling under CDBG, I don't know how we're going to qualify for that either. I would have to do more research. As far as I see it right now, I see the extent of the benefit is in maintaining relationships.
I guess my question is there some positive, and again, I get it, it's either there's no benefit, but is there negative benefit versus, some potential positive benefit? And that would be the question. Laura, I think.
Yeah, so just does it require administration as it is? I know when you, for example, were trying to apply for the equestrian, I know that you put effort into that and we're denied, but if we just status quo, stay in the program, what kind of administrative, are there audits that we have to answer? Okay, so there's nothing administratively that we have to do unless we go to work and try to capture the money.
Exactly. The only thing we'll have to do is pass this resolution.
Okay.
Well, and of course, and to Council Member Bentley's point, I mean, the certifications we believe are accurate. We believe we are doing the things that we're certifying we're doing. We would certainly not suggest otherwise. But as far as active accountability, active submission of documents showing that, no. But we do believe that we could certainly pass an audit if one was came to us.
Okay. Peyton?
So, Steve, I noticed that in the email that other cities received a lot of money through this. I mean, I saw tons of cities that received a lot of money. So we have applied before for this program, and we have never received any funds from this?
We have.
Okay.
Prior to my arrival here, we have.
Do you know what that was for and how much?
We built a trail/sidewalk on Cogburn. I don't remember the extent of it, but I do remember there was an administration change down in Fulton County, and we ended up getting denied on our last reimbursement request. That was when I took over as city manager, which just happened to coincide. I think it was right at the beginning of 2016. We haven't seen anything since.
And that was one of those, I remember that well, and that is one where we actually became a subrecipient, and that's when we had to actually sign the next document, which actually subjects us to even some more regulations.
And that's the only relationship we can have. Where I was, we weren't. We were the actual recipient, and then people applied to us. We were Fulton County in that equation.
Right.
In this one, we applied to Fulton County. And there's a lot of rules. Ken he's not overstating it. There's a lot of rules and regulations. They're mostly income-based. You have to provide a lot of documentation to prove that you qualify for these things. I do believe the programs that we created, we should have qualified for them. But for whatever reason, they determined we did not. I do believe that there are programs in the future that we could possibly apply for. But that being said, the amount of money we might get out of this as a result of being just a small part of Fulton County might not be worth the administrative oversight that we'll have to deal with in being able to access those funds. So the reason you see those cities and those locations that did receive a significant amount of money, it's because of their census tracts and their income.
Like Hateville got like a lot of money.
You could become a recipient just based on your census tract,
okay.
and we're just simply not going to qualify here.
Okay. Answers it for me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Ken? I'll open up for a motion on this item or any discussion.
So my final discussion is, for me, and I understand if there's not support for this, but when I weigh the risk of, doing nothing and staying in, and the other issues or opportunities that we want to maybe continue, I would support this based on the fact that it's not going to cost us anything administratively if we do nothing. And for that, I can make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-160.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion for an approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Cookerly. Any discussion? I would say that I, for the same reasons, could support this, but any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So that Tammy was 4 in approval and 2 against. Councilmember Jameson and Longoria against, for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. Our final, are you ready? Our
Yep.
final New business item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton calling for the State of Georgia fiscal year 2021 budget to include funding for the new NOW/comp waiver recipients. Agenda item number 2161, Stephen Krokoff.
I'll go ahead and start. I can read this resolution. Basically, this was brought forward to our city. We discussed it at the North Fulton Mayor's meetings with other cities, and they are passing the same thing. This was actually brought to our attention by one of Johns Creek's council members, and the best I understand is the Now Options Waiver helps those with development disabilities as they get older to give programs, so they can live a more productive and active life. And so, again, I'll be glad to read the resolution if you guys, but obviously you've read it. So with that, unless there's any questions or staff has anything, I think it's a good thing. And like I say, I don't know if staff has anything else to add to it or if there's any questions, but
I can answer any questions if you have any.
Specifically for autism, mental disabilities, challenges, and helps support those adults for them to live independently.
That's the key to it, that it's going to support them living in the community as opposed to a residential treatment facility.
Doesn't it
one of the things that got me thinking about is one of the parents saying their biggest concern is what happens when the parents get old and pass away. Who's going to help with their
Wasn't it
kids?
partly too because they age out of some of
Yes.
the other programs?
Exactly. This
right?
gives them continue. Okay, I'll open up for motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20-161.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Longoria. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, under different situations. I got it, Tammy. I'm just making a comment.
Well, Mayor, pardon my interruption. I made an unintentional error. We did receive an additional public comment that I did not identify as a general public comment. I thought it was later, and it wasn't. So may I read that general public comment into the record?
Mr. Mayor, that'd be in order.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
My apologies. This is from Mr. Bob Voles, who lives at 15210 High Grove Road, Milton. It says, Mayor, members of our city council, our issue is that we have to pay the city $25 to take each rotten or bad or any tree down, and we are to replace it with another tree. Before we became Milton, we did not pay a fee to Fulton County. This is another tax, just our opinion. Please reconsider eliminating it. In our case, over the last 10 years, we have added new trees to our backyard, 4 new Japanese maples, 2 pine oaks, 1 white dogwood. It is our suggestion that Milton residents should be given credit for any new trees planted by the owner instead of needing to plant another new one if an old pine or similar tree needs taking down. Please reconsider this as you would revise the canopy tree ordinance. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep, good comment. No, just want to thank everybody. I don't want to use the term new normal because I know Peyton doesn't want to have to sit down there and time out, but no, appreciate that extra work.
It's
worked pretty well.
I feel a little more comfortable down here.
I appreciate the extra work that staff had to do to set up, and hopefully we'll all get back to our old normal very soon. Council, does council have anything they want to report on or talk about?
I have just a quick comment because there's, we need to celebrate some great things that have happened. And I just want to thank the city manager and for the pool, the rehab on the pool. The tennis courts look phenomenal. They're safe. People aren't going to trip anymore. They've been resurfaced. And it looks really great. And I think, we listened to the citizens, what they wanted. And it's a beautiful facility now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Jim and his staff all day long.
Thank you.
Paul?
I'd just like to compliment again, I've sung the praises before of our city communications department. Greg
Hold
is
on,
just,
hold on. Stand right there.
I'm sorry? Well, continues to do a great job. Also, in light of the national events taking place right now that are very disturbing, it's great that we are proactively putting communication out to the community for their awareness, for their safety, and just encourage us to stay on the front end of the communication, and he does a great job.
Okay. All right, then we'll move to staff reports.
Mayor, before we do, could we discuss the DRB issue?
Absolutely.
So tomorrow we had scheduled a design review board meeting, and we can't get a quorum. We have one, I believe, one individual that is out of town for whatever reason, and then only one or two that are willing to come in, so we can't create a physical quorum. The DRB, as you know, is they make recommendations, except for when it comes to demolition permits. There were 14 items on the agenda tomorrow. There are major projects that were on there, and a lot of things are going to be held up. I don't know that 2 weeks changes anything, and I think we have to have some sort of discussion about what to do about that. I reached out to Ken and the mayor earlier just to make them aware, talk about maybe the spectrum of possibilities of how we can tackle this, whether council can approve these things, considering the recommendations. Should we just move forward? Again, I'd like to just have that conversation and see if maybe we can get some direction or thoughts.
I just said, I think, I think some of the options are not that they're recommended at all by staff, but, staff could move forward instead of taking the recommendations from DRB if it's deemed important, but that's obviously not recommended. The council could take over and do the DRB's job temporarily, or I can't remember what was the other option, Ken. Just defer things.
The option was recommending body. Staff can go forward without the recommendations. That's number one. Number two, we could, in fact, the reason for this is because of the pandemic. As I understand it, that's the reason that they can't assemble. We could modify the emergency ordinance to have the city council serve as basically do the function of the DRB. If you wanted to do that, those would be two very easy options. The other one is simply to wait, to not have them assemble and therefore delay the business of the city with respect to the DRB. That may be unacceptable, but that's another option.
Any thoughts, Peyton?
So so they don't want to come in city, is there a virtual meeting? Can they do a virtual meeting?
Well, that's a good question. And so, the city council adopted, as part of its last emergency ordinance, it adopted a reopening plan, and that plan has sort of driven the operations of the city, and that plan anticipates that we're converting back to physical meetings, like this evening. And so that's what my advice has been, is that's the will of the council, and that's the policy of the council.
Well, I don't think they should be waiting. I mean, we either need to do it ourselves or get staff to do it, because it's not fair to the people that are waiting.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm available tomorrow night.
Does doing it ourselves mean that we have to post another special called meeting and we have a period of announcement to the community before we conduct that, or can it be on a more compressed timeline?
That option is my least favorite option, the council serving as the DRB, and not because the council could have not, of course, served in that function, just because I think we do need to have a little process before we do that. I don't know that our codes just anticipate you all sliding into that role automatically. I think there would need to be an emergency ordinance, because it is, in fact, this emergency that is driving their absence. We could modify the ordinance, and it could last for 30 days for you all to fill that role. Otherwise, we could simply say, staff, you typically would require their recommendation. If they're not able to meet, then go forth and do your business and do your job without their recommendation. That may be the most viable, and that may be candidly, I don't want to say the easiest, but the simplest.
But just to clarify,
Hold
we
on,
can't get,
Paul.
I'm sorry.
Joe?
Sorry.
Ken, if we had a situation where a committee became non-functional and it was a problem in terms of moving forward certain business that the city had to do, we would assess what is the problem. Is there a way to address the issue that is facing the committee? Or if not, we would contemplate, and we've actually done this, contemplate replacing the committee. Now, I don't want to suggest that people's concerns are unfounded about not being able to participate in meetings that we're asking them to participate in, okay? I am very confused because, like I said 2 weeks ago, the virus hasn't changed, our immunity hasn't changed. Why do we think that getting together for meetings makes any sense whatsoever? If 3 weeks ago we were meeting virtually and we were able to get our work done, we should be able to do that 3 weeks from now, all right? So I don't get it, but we need to make a call as to whether or not this essentially is a cause for us having a non-functional committee.
Well, I mean, if the council wanted to leave it up to each individual committee to decide whether or not, or subcommittee, the BZA, the Planning Commission, the DRB, to make the decision on their own, whether they will meet remotely or in person, you could do that. What I'm seeing in most jurisdictions, though, is from a staffing level and administration level, that becomes a little bit difficult because they're mixing and matching between having in-person meetings with maybe some degree of cyber participation, and then others are simply, and even for the public, it can be a little consuming, or confusing. So what are you doing? Are we able to meet in person in Milton, or are we not having to meet in person? But if you wanted to do, Councilmember Longoria, if the council wanted to give all of these, I call them subcommittees, I don't mean anything derogative by that, but if they wanted to give these sub-entities the authority to set their own rules, you could do that. But in Milton, what you did was you adopted an emergency ordinance, and you also ratified basically an opening plan that my understanding was that plan was sort of setting your expectations of how the business in Milton was to be conducted. And that's the basis of my guidance, has been the basis of my guidance.
Can I jump in, Mayor, if that's all right?
Steve, go ahead.
Just to help answer that question a bit, the reason we can open today as opposed to a few weeks ago is because of the numbers that we've been seeing coming out of through the CDC. I mean, we're just not increasing. And we feel we've come to a point where it is safe for us to do it in this manner. And that, coupled with our inability to get material business done, that's why that's why this is so packed, and why your next meeting is going to be so packed. It was really holding back the business of the city.
I understand.
And the subsequent meeting for the DRB, my other concern would just be a due process issue. It is if we're going to bring it, if we can bring it online, there are some. A DRB is, people are usually up here with the schematics and
plans,
pictures,
and does it lend itself? I get you.
It's going to be very difficult to do that online. I'm sure if we're directed to do so, I'll put forth the necessary resources to be able to make it happen. But I don't think it's going to lend itself as easy as our council meeting on Zoom. So I caution you there.
I got a comment too, and I understand, I certainly wouldn't want to influence anyone that didn't feel safe or comfortable, or if they had a weak immunity system or some reason to not be in public. But I'm almost curious to wonder if the members realize, because you look around now and the way that we are set up now, and with the cleanliness and the distancing and whatnot, I'm just wondering if they even, some of the members that may be concerned even are aware that, we've made some changes here. So that may be, Laura?
Yeah, so do we know when there's hesitation to come personally, is there any thought that would change at any point, or are we dealing with in 2 weeks will be, no, we don't know.
It's difficult to say. We did send them a picture of the setup, showing where people would be sitting. I don't know if people are going to feel more comfortable in 2 weeks than they are now. I don't know if any of them have underlying conditions, nor can I ask. It's just whether people feel comfortable or not, of whether or not they're going to come in.
That's right. I mean, right now, unless there's going to be some additions to the governor's order, I know that those that I consider, or that are considered like immunocompromised, I believe the shelter in place, I think it lasts till June 12th. And then the existing statewide declaration of emergency right now lasts till June 15th. That's my understanding.
Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my suggestion is let's go ahead and let staff vet these, and they need to be approved because our residents expect us to be working for them as of this date, and we can't keep delaying it. And
I was actually going to say something similar to that, but, are there prioritized items that are being held up that our staff can, I know there's, I have to have a little trust here, but that could make the same decisions that typically the DRB makes and move things forward temporarily, and then hopefully maybe by next session, DRB is ready to meet. Is that a...
I think we could. There might be there is low-hanging fruit there. There are some retreads on there where we got the input from DRB last time, and the necessary changes have been made. So there may be some significant low-hanging fruit. We could also assess them to see if we think anything is tricky and then make a determination. I just don't know legally whether or not. I can't imagine why we couldn't hold off and say we would like DRB interaction on
Absolutely.
Project X.
Yeah, I think these would all be decisions made in good faith. I would have no problem with that. And I think if Parag and the city manager want to walk through that, I think that'd be fine.
And, maybe, I don't know if you guys can run them by, council or DRB. Obviously want to be open and transparent, but certainly I agree with some of the points. Paul?
Is there anything that we that the citizens would feel compromised on if there was not a public hearing? If decisions are made by staff, not in light of day, no sunshine on that, if there is opposition to something?
I would feel a lot stronger on those. I mean, I think that we're going to have to make sure it is only those issues for which they make recommendations on. But if it's, other than demolition permits and things of that nature, but if it's, as long as it's just recommendations, I'm not concerned from a due process perspective.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And that's my last question, is this the only committee that we're anticipating this problem with? Like, for example, BZA, do we know yet if we expect the same concerns with meeting in person? Because that's a different, that's a quasi legal.
Judicial.
Yeah, judicial.
Fundamentally, we did not contact BZ and the Planning Commission members. Since we had a meeting of DRB on June 2nd, we did contact the DRB members. But as you know, many of the items which are heard by DRB, then they go to BZA.
So that's what we need to get a read on.
If we are not having a DRB meeting, that might impact the BZA also.
Because it's flowing down.
Yeah, so it's
stream.
a flow thing. So, but we have not contacted the BZA members or the Planning Commission members to identify whether they will be coming for in-person meeting or not.
That would be good to know.
Well, I think, too, the big thing is just communication. I mean, again, if they were here live tonight, they would see that maybe it's less of a concern. So, okay, so.
Yeah, BZA. A lot of these are BZA issues.
Okay, so that will go through a public process, the next phase on it. So is council in general agreement of the discussion we just had, Peyton?
Yeah, I'm in agreement, but I think it's very important going forward. We have to be prepared that they can have virtual meetings. So, if something happens, we can't just shut down the city for 6 months. They have to be prepared to have virtual meetings just like we did in case something does happen in the fall. That's all.
I agree with you entirely. The issue, this could have been a virtual meeting, but we were limited with what we were allowed to do. If there is a way for us to be able to conduct the full business of the city online, I guess we could, but you would anticipate that everybody would then be handling all of their business online.
Something to think about just for future
I would just
stuff,
say this.
that's all.
I think Steve was clear earlier.
Yeah.
You could do it virtual, but we have to make that decision. Do we want to, change it to, or, to keep them virtual or make them virtual?
I think this has just been an unprecedented time in Georgia. As long as I've done this, I've never seen governments sort of shut down this way for 90 days and the business of the public shut down for 90 days. At first, everyone was trying to figure out how do we disincentivize our citizens to not feel like they need to be watching government. And the way we did that was to try and make non-controversial things be the only things we were doing. That was it was in good faith. We were just trying to say, look, citizens, we know you're worried about this disease and the virus and not, this zoning coming up. So let's focus on that. But as with most things, people begin to get weary of fixating on that and want to get back to the business of living. And we've tried to accommodate that. But I hear you. It makes a lot of sense.
But bottom line, if we do choose to go in the direction where staff takes care of this one particular meeting, we as a council we're not voting on something now, but that would be allowed legally based on, that would be legal for staff based on
Yeah.
code, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is not the council deciding this. This is simply staff, given the unusual times, making the decision to move forward on items they already have the authority to move forward on.
Right, that's what I was.
They're simply doing it
That's what I was
without the
going to double check. Now, but also this is a one-time, this could be a one-time thing. You know, you guys can let us know how it's going with the rest of them, and we may have to bring this before us to make a formal decision on how we handle it moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, to Councilman Longoria's point, I mean, at some point, our agencies have to function.
Okay. All right. Everybody okay with that direction in theory? Okay. All right. Move on to staff reports. Public Works.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Brief report. I want to keep this as brief as I can, but we did have a big month in the month of April. May. So I'll give you an update of what things that did occur in May. As you know, we demolished the house at Thompson and Hopewell. The Birmingham Park trail widening is completed, and really like what went on out there. We've done our road striping. That work is completed too. You've probably seen some of that work. Sidewalk extension at Mayfield, where we link Crabapple to Alpharetta, is nearing completion. And upcoming for the month of June, we're finalizing our bid package for the Thompson and Hopewell roundabout. And we're finalizing our bid package for the Hamby-Hopewell roundabout. We also had a bid opening for some stormwater projects, a couple small projects in residential areas. I think Oakhurst, Leaf, and Hopewell Crest. We had a couple stormwater failures that we have to repair. Right-of-way permits. We issued 14 right-of-way permits for the month of May. And maintenance items, we had a total of 81 work orders, which is down. Typically, we average about 115 to 125. And most of those were potholes. And pavement issues. We had with 30 of those, 16 signs, 10 debris trash, 9 dead animals, and a few other incendiary stuff. But busy month for us, and June seems to be the same way. Any questions?
No, excuse me. The only thing I would say is about bid processes and whatnot. So, and also just obviously, I think everybody's aware on the Milton Country Club, we are having a work session on the 8th on that before that goes out to bid, correct?
That's correct. Next Monday we'll be doing another presentation at the work session.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, come on down.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So obviously I've been working on the alcohol ordinance. I was just in my office, and the drafts that I can now throw away, it's a nice stack to go to the recycle bin. So thank you. That's very exciting. I appreciate it. So we did another North Milton COVID-19 business impact survey. We had about half the number of responses. Kind of the same concerns going forward with consumer confidence, a recession, and access to capital. But one of the interesting things was a question about how we can help. And the number one thing that they said was with marketing help. So the people who responded that they wanted feedback from the city or another touch, we had a Zoom call with Callie Boatwright, the president of the chamber, to talk about what they're doing in their COVID recovery task force. The mayor joined us for a part of that. And from that phone call, the chamber has already been able to help one of our businesses connect with a PPP banker. So that was very productive. Another thing that we're doing, June 18th, we're going to have our virtual small business symposium. We didn't want to forego this event, but also didn't want people coming into City Hall. So we have 5 speakers lined up, a lady from the Georgia Small Business Development Center, somebody from Kennesaw State. We have a lawyer to give lawyer advice, a social media person, and then Renaissance Bank is going to come speak about whatever loan programs are available at that time. So that's what we'll be working on going forward. So thank you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks.
Sarah. All right. Next, do I have a motion to enter into an executive session as added to our agenda tonight?
Yes, I moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Bentley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Prefer to sit here, actually.
All right, David, are we on?
Yes, we are.
I got 3, 4. Do I have a motion to reconvene our meeting?
Reconvene, so moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to reconvene. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
How many? We're just missing Carol. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's, again, the same spot.